The guy was working in the fields. That summer was really hot. Seki Kanji quit his salaried job to become just a farmer. When he thought it would rain for several days, it didn't rain at all. Generally, the rains were very scarce. Thanks to the rain in that mountainous region and the temperature, the vegetables that summer grew rapidly. But compared to a regular year, there have been many complications. The man smokes a little cigarette before leaving and wonders what he should make for dinner. Every day is the same. He heats water to take the bath, and before he knows it, hours have passed. Saiki Kanji grabs a drink from the fridge. Then, someone knocks on the door. A girl dressed as a knight apologizes and asks if she could stay there for one night. At that moment, the guy's ordinary life came to an end. The girl says it will only be for one night and that she doesn't mind sleeping in the shed. Then, she asks what he thinks. Saiki Kanji wonders if this is a cosplay or if she is a foreigner. Then, he asks what the girl is doing in that village and says she can call a taxi to leave. The girl says she doesn't know what he is talking about. Then, trying to be friendly, Saiki Kanji asks her name. The girl introduces herself with a huge, elaborate name. The guy asks how old she is, and the girl says she is 18. Then, he wants to know what she was doing in the village. Christina explains that her army was defeated in the Battle of Mosingate Fortress. They couldn't withstand the relentless attacks from the savage tribes, but she managed to escape in the end. Saiki Kanji has already decided to ignore that crazy story and says it must have been terrible. He says he is the only person living there, so the girl should understand why he doesn't want to let her stay. Saiki Kanji questions if Chris isn't afraid to spend the night with a stranger. He says it's a shame for a man to refuse a woman's advances. She seems to be a foreign cosplayer who could spread rumors about Japan. As a Japanese man, he cannot let that happen. Chris says that she appreciates his concern, but she can hardly walk anymore and prefers to spend the night at his house rather than face the orcs. The girl says she has no energy left to resist. The guy is at a loss for words. Then, Saiki Kanji says she can stay, and the girl says she will pay for his hospitality. The man says it's no big deal, so she doesn't need to worry. Then, he adds that the house is a bit messy and that she should wait there. Chris shouts that she has no complaints and just wants a place to sleep. She takes off her armor. Now, the girl is wearing normal clothes. Saiki Kanji says that before going to the room, she needs to take a bath. He hands her body soap and shampoo. Then, he teaches her how to use the container and says he doesn't have conditioner. Chris is confused because she has never seen those strange things before. Then, the guy comes back with a yukata. It's a cloth to wear as clothing. Saiki Kanji says he will be outside tending to the fire, and the girl should let him know if the water is hot or warm. He puts a lot of firewood in the fireplace until he gets tired. Then, he asks if the temperature is good yet, and the girl says it's warm. Then, Saiki Kanji asks which country the girl comes from. Indignant, Chris asks if he doubts that she is the daughter of the Count of Nelvis from the Kingdom of Urid. Curious, Chris asks what the guy's name is, and he introduces himself as Saiki Kanji, where Kanji is his first name and Saiki is his family name. Chris stands up indignantly, saying she didn't know he had a family and an honorable lineage. The boy says he doesn't know why she is so agitated, since it's just a common name. While smoking another cigarette, the guy continues to add wood to the fireplace. He asks how the temperature is, but he receives no answer. Worried, Saiki Kanji goes in and asks if the girl is done. Since she doesn't say anything either, the man ends up opening the door. Worried, Saiki Kanji enters and finds Chris resting in the bathtub. Chris was fighting hard. The voices in her head call her a coward, traitor, and failure. The girl says they are mistaken because she is from the Urid Kingdom. The orcs approach, trying to attack her. Chris runs away in desperation. Then, she reaches a ravine and finds herself completely surrounded. The girl would rather lose her life than be caught by those disgusting creatures, so she jumps off the cliff. Chris wakes up from her nightmare in a panic. Meanwhile, Kanji is cooking like a true chef. When Chris appears, he greets her and asks if she slept well. The night before, the guy didn't do anything special. He just checked if the girl was still alive, covered her with a towel to take her to the room, and put a yukata on her before leaving. But Saiki Kanji is 32 years old, single, and now living with a woman he doesn't know. The last time he had contact with a woman was while living in Tokyo a few years ago. He asks if Chris is hungry and offers her a bowl. The table is completely full. The girl says it looks very delicious and asks if she can really eat. Kanji says that's just breakfast. They will still have lunch and dinner, and now they should talk while they eat. The guide looks at her and concludes that the girl is quite different from how she was the day before. Even her voice seems different. Saiki Kanji asks if Chris knows how to use chopsticks and comments that he can offer her a fork and knife if she wants. The girl accepts. Before eating, the guy makes a greeting. The girl asks if that's some kind of prayer. She has never heard that before. Then, Kanji explains that by nature Japanese people are Buddhists, but he wouldn't call that a prayer. Before eating, you say, "Itadakimasu." It means you are grateful for the food and should not waste it. Chris says she understands and makes the greeting afterward. The man thought that since she is a foreigner, she would be familiar with Japanese customs, but she doesn't seem to know anything. Despite that, her Japanese is very good. The girl tries the rice and finds it delicious. Kanji says he cooked it and that she can eat as much as she wants. Then, the girl tries everything. She is very impressed that he made all of that by himself. Chris continues to eat a lot, and Saiki Kanji observes that she seems to be enjoying it. From what Chris told the MC, she is in Japan but doesn't know how she got there. Naturally, she also doesn't have a passport. She is not a cosplayer from a European country either. In fact, she is a warrior who fought against savage tribes. To buy time, she abandoned the battle as a messenger and ended up in that place. Chris confirms that in summary, that's exactly it, but the guy can't believe it's true. The girl thanks him for his hospitality and he asks where she is going. Chris says she needs to get to the capital quickly to report the situation of the battle. Before she leaves, Saiki Kanji says he has something for her, then gives her clothes. He says those are the only pieces of clothing he has, so she shouldn't feel uncomfortable. The girl looks down and Saiki Kanji asks what's wrong. She wants to ask him to accompany her, but is afraid of encountering demons or savage tribes. Saiki Kanji pats his old truck and says they can go in that. Chris asks if that metal thing is a carriage. When they get into the vehicle, the guy asks her to fasten her seatbelt. After that, he speeds off, startling Chris. They practically fly down the road. When they stop, Saiki Kanji asks if Chris is okay. She feels terrible and is shaking all over. Pointing to the forest, Saiki Kanji asks if that is really the right place. The girl says there's no mistake. Beside that area, she was attacked by a group of orcs, jumped off a cliff, and wandered around in desperation. The man wonders how long the girl will keep up that nonsensical story. He was interested and followed her, but now he is scared. The girl stops and says, "This is the place," but there's nothing there. Chris insists she really went that way. Saiki Kanji says there's no ravine in that location. The girl repeats that she is the eldest daughter of Count Melvis, Christiana Brunhilde von Melvis, nothing more, nothing less. Then she says she also doesn't understand what's happening and apologizes to Saiki Kanji. The man suggests that the world she came from is different from this one. Then Chris remembers that she received a scroll with teleportation magic from a friend. Saiki Kanji asks the girl if magic exists. Then she says she has been using magic since they met to be able to speak her language. The guy can't deny that she was really speaking Japanese very well, as if she hadn't missed a day of Duolingo. The girl starts to ramble, saying that she is no longer a messenger nor an Amazon and that she is not alive for her parents. Even so, she still has her life. They get into the car and head back. Saiki Kanji tells her that the girl is really strong. Then he says they can eat something delicious for lunch. Chris asks him not to use kind words as if he feels sorry for her. The coward feels like an idiot. Chris wonders if another messenger managed to deliver the message to Fort Montagat. For the people of the kingdom of Urid, for the knights, and for her parents, she is in another world in a country called Japan. The girl notices that a knight like her cannot use the forbidden teleportation magic, so she doesn't know what to do. Inside the car, there's a tense atmosphere. Then, Saiki Kanji says he needs to make a quick stop at the farm and asks if there's any problem. Chris says she's fine with it. The man says he needs to make a delivery and is a bit in a hurry because of that. At that moment, the girl remembers that Saiki Kanji is a farmer. They both stop at the farm. Saiki Kanji asks her to wait a bit because they will leave soon. Chris becomes curious about the fence in front of her and touches it. Then the girl gets shocked and complains, saying that it hurt. Chris asks what kind of lightning magic that was, and Kanji explains that it's not magic and that they should go back to the car. The girl is shaking because she made such a mistake. She sits in the truck bed, staring into space. Kanji is there cutting the eggplants from his farm, and the girl appears behind him like a ghost. Chris says she's never seen a purple eggplant before. Kanji notes that there are white eggplants, but in Japan, the purple ones are more common. In other countries, the green or white ones might be more common. White eggplants have a thicker skin, while purple ones have a thinner skin, and ultraviolet rays that can't penetrate them. Chris didn't understand anything because she skipped chemistry classes, but she lets it go. The girl squats in the middle of the farm. Kanji asks if she's interested, and Chris replies that she's just curious. In summary, purple eggplants absorb oil well and are mainly sold to restaurants and Italian food stores. Chris says she has no idea what an Italian restaurant is, but that thing looks really tasty. In another garden, the girl says those tomatoes are very small. The guy says they are Sicilian red tomatoes. They smell like grass but can be eaten raw. The girl devours one and concludes that it's delicious. Kanji comments that although they are good raw, they taste even better when cooked. The guy shows her another variety of tomato and says those also taste good when cooked. After a while, he finishes loading the truck bed of his car. Looking out the window, Chris asks if they are not going in the opposite direction, and Kanji explains that he has to deliver those vegetables to his intermediary. She says that even if they don't hurry, those vegetables won't spoil. Kanji explains that the freshness of the vegetables starts to decrease as soon as you pick them, so he wants to deliver them quickly. Yao helped him along, and that's why he became his benefactor. Chris is impressed when they arrive in the city. She says she thought the existence of another world was an absurd story. But when she looks at that landscape, she has no choice but to believe. Kanji says he told her they were not in the kingdom of Yuridi. The man stops the car at the warehouse and tells her to wait there. Chris wanted to get out and learn more about that world. From the car, she watches Kanji talking to the man and wonders if that is Yao. After being seen by the old man, the girl wonders if she should go greet him. Zhao's look makes her think that he is having problems. Kanji still can't believe in the existence of another world. He wonders if he should believe Chris's story. When noon comes, the guy asks if she wants to have lunch. The girl says yes and says she will help him. Kanji asks if she knows how to cook, and the girl feels offended. Chris explains that she used to tidy up the house, cook, and do the laundry. She went to night school at 12, but until then, she received strict training from her mother. The girl asks what they will cook, and Kanji replies that it will be pasta. They will use the vegetables they picked earlier. The man turns on the faucet, and Chris gets startled, wondering how that works. When Kanji turns on the stove, the girl also looks like a fool, asking if that is magic. Then, the man says that in that world, they don't have tools that work with magic. There are subjects that study the logic behind that, and that is all that exists in nature. As a result, many things can be produced by science. Chris observes that, since she doesn't need to carry firewood or draw water from the well, there is nothing she knows how to do. Kanji tells the girl not to get depressed. Then, he asks her to cut the vegetables. The girl is impressed even with the quality of the knife. The guy starts peeling the tomatoes while the girl cuts the eggplant. The water on the stove begins to boil. Kanji puts the spaghetti into the water. Then, he starts cutting more seasonings. He tastes the pasta to see if it's cooked and begins to make the sauce. Finally, the eggplant, bacon, and tomato paste is ready. In the end, Chris did nothing but cut the eggplant. Kanji thanks to her before eating. Then, he tastes it and says it turned out perfect because the vegetables were great. The girl stands there, completely amazed, looking at the plate, and the guide tells her to eat. After blessing the food, Chris twirls some pasta on her fork and tastes it. The girl melts because she liked it so much. She says it has been a while since she ate something incredible like that. Breakfast was good too, but it doesn't compare to this. Kanji says he prefers Japanese-style meals, but breakfast took a lot of work. Chris is very happy with that smoked meat that came from the village's pig production. When you eat something delicious, all the sad and cruel things disappear. In that moment, you can forget everything, and when you do that, you can have hope, even if it's just a little. Kanji answers the phone and talks to Honami. They exchange some small talk before the guy says he has a favor to ask. In the morning, Kanji kneels in front of his altar. Then, it's time to start the day. Chris woke up early and says she slept very well, but in reality, the girl seems to have had a terrible insomnia. The man says she seems more cheerful, but she should take it easy. Chris says she would like to pay for the food and lodging. She doesn't have the means to return to her world for now, so to repay the favor, she wants to work there. Kanji says that if it's for a few days, that's fine. The day before, he spoke with a government official he knows, and they discuss various things about the girl. Now, she shouldn't worry about anything. Chris is indignant and says it's impossible for a farmer to have connections with someone in the government, but Kanji says they have been friends since college. The girl is impressed that the guy went to college. She has never heard of commoners who could afford one. The guy explains that anyone can go to college. Outside, it's scorching hot, so the guy doesn't know if she should work in the fields, but the girl says she has no problem with that. He gives her a straw hat. Out of nowhere, a gust of wind comes, and Kanji tells her to be careful, because that hat might fly away. As the guy gets closer to adjust the hat, they end up looking at each other like two idiots. It's fun, even though the girl's companions are all dead. She feels shaken, and Kanji says Chris should rest a bit. She complains, saying she is full of energy and he shouldn't decide that alone. The guy tries to explain that she doesn't seem well. They hit the road in the car, and Kanji reflects that the girl seemed to be having fun earlier and suddenly got sulky. For a girl her age, that whole situation must be tough. In the middle of the garden, Kanji explains to Chris how she should take care of the eggplants. He tells her to pick them and place them carefully in the basket, never throwing them. They start working together in the garden. Kanji asks if, in her world, the girl also helped with the crops, but Chris explains that nobles usually just own the plantations. Then she questions if Kanji has always been a peasant. The guy says there's no class system in Japan and that being a farmer is just his profession. He has been a farmer for 4 years, but before, when he was in Tokyo, he was a salaried worker with a very good salary. Chris asks if he wasn't a servant, and Kanji explains that they are not in feudalism, even though he thought that way at 20. Chris questions the guy's age, and he says he is 32. The girl is shocked and asks if he is that old. She thought he was around her age. Then the girl gets confused because it's rare for a farmer to be in good health at that age. Moreover, she doesn't understand why he is still single. With nothing else to do, the girl suggests that it would be a good idea for her to be his fiancé. In that case, the peasants wouldn't suspect her or doubt her honor. Additionally, she is an illegal immigrant. Chris asks if things work differently in Japan, and the guy says that kind of talk is very outdated. Then he tries to change the subject, but the girl isn't satisfied and asks what he thinks. Trying to escape the situation, Kanji says she wouldn't want him by her side as if it were a farce, but the girl doesn't seem to mind. She explains that a person's preferences don't matter in her marriage. It's the patriarch who decides who the partner will be. Chris explains that he would be with anyone just to ensure the well-being of his family. After that topic ends, they lounge around on the floor. Kanji observes that the girl is quite chatty. She retorts that he is very good at listening. Kanji disagrees and says he usually isn't good with people who talk too much, leaving the girl feeling insecure. Then the fool tries to fix the mess he made. So he explains that he doesn't like people who speak loudly and cause a fuss. Chris says he understands, and apparently he wouldn't be able to marry a noble's daughter. After a few seconds of silence, Kanji tells her not to worry because he will take care of her. At that moment, Hanami goes to check if anyone with the surname Chris has entered the country, and after that, there are other steps to follow. That whole process will probably take 2 weeks. Afterward, they finish the work and delivered the vegetables to Yael. Chris says that if there's anything else to be done, he can ask, because she is a knight and accepts any physical work, as she doesn't want to be treated like a guest. Kanji reflects that she already has enough problems, so he won't let the girl do any heavy work. Making up some excuse, he says that farming isn't hard work, because they have enough technology to make things simple. When it gets close to noon, Kanji asks what the girl wants for lunch. She says that the tomato pasta from the previous day was delicious, but she doesn't know what else the boy can make. Kanji says that since it's a hot day, they can eat something cold. The girl promptly gets uncomfortable and expresses that she doesn't like cold dishes. Apparently, she is picky and doesn't eat anything raw unless it's freshly harvested. The boy reflects that probably sashimi or fresh eggs are taboo in her culture. Chris says that as long as it satisfies his hunger, it's fine, but in the worst case, they could die. Refrigerated storage doesn't exist in Chris's world, so besides vegetables, if the food isn't heated, there's a chance that could happen. Kanji shows the girl the refrigerator. She is shocked, reflecting on how it can stay cold, and the man says it's just the magic of science. Returning to the idea of lunch, the man says that the food will be cold soup and an old dish, but delicious. When it comes to famous cold dishes, they have Yamagata, Saitama, and Miyazaki, each with its characteristics. Recently, Kanji has enjoyed the Miyazaki-style miso soup. Upon opening the refrigerator, he notices that something is missing. So he goes to the garden. The girl observes that he has another plot of crops, and the man says that is his personal garden. He shows her a leaf called perilla, also known as shiso, which will be crucial for their soup. The man hands the leaves to Chris and asks the girl to cut them. She takes on that task as if it were the job of her life. When the girl finishes, she sees that Kanji is doing something strange called the itazuri technique. By adding salt and rolling the cucumber, it can reduce its bitter taste. The girl is excited and asks if she can try to help. Then the man asks her to cut the cucumber very thin. The cold miso soup is finally ready. Chris asks how they eat that, and Kanji explains that originally, that soup was made for busy farmers who wanted something easy to eat and quick to make. They pour the cold soup over the hot rice, mix it, and it's ready to eat. After tasting it, Chris notes that it's cold, even though the rice was hot just before. It gives a nice feeling and gently passes down his throat. Moreover, the flavor is great. They eat a lot, and the girl wants to have seconds. She says she could eat several of those little soup containers. Meanwhile, a new message from Hanami arrives for Kanji. On Tuesday night, Kanji is on the phone talking. When he ends the call, he goes after Chris to talk. The girl is cleaning her armor and asks what's wrong. The man says he received a call from Honami, the government official, and after looking over some things and submitting some documents, he got scolded by his boss. The girl is confused, and Kanji says they told his friend to leave her alone. They fall silent for a moment, and Chris asks what he means by that. Kanji explains that he thinks the boss made a logical decision. Chris says she is a person from another world, but there's no way to prove it. Most people will think it's a hallucination. Moreover, all of that goes against the science they know. Frustrated, Chris asks what she should do since she is still an illegal immigrant. Then the man says that Honami will go there unofficially the next afternoon. He should hear her story, and that way she can convince him. But Chris gets a bit upset then. Kanji says he doesn't fully believe that story about coming from another world either. No one believes in another world in real life. Furious, the girl asks what he believes about her. Kanji observes that it's just a guess, but he doesn't think she is lying since she is a terrible liar. It's easy to read her expressions, and she can't hide what she thinks. The girl screams that it's absurd, but she uses the wrong word, which only makes the whole situation more hilarious. Chris complains, telling him not to treat her like a child since she is already 18 years old. Even so, she has heard from her parents that she was too direct and needed to be more cautious. Her superiors also gave her the same warning, and she hasn't been able to fix that side of herself. Kanji tries to talk to the girl, but she locks herself in her room, saying she's going to sleep. Later, she is in a bad mood, sprawled on the bed. Meanwhile, the man smokes a little cigarette. Both are exhausted from the situation. The next day, they meet, and the girl is still in a bad mood. Kanji asks if she slept well, and she replies that she did. Then, Chris asks if they are going to the field and says she needs to get ready. The duo goes to take care of the plant in that terrible, gloomy weather. Then, Kanji says he doesn't know how the others feel, and that must be why he makes everyone feel bad. If he ever does something she thinks is bad, she should tell him so he can apologize. Chris is completely confused by that reaction but tries to hide it. Later, the girl is doing house chores, taking clothes off the line. Kanji is happy that she is no longer angry. The girl says that his friend must be a good person, and the man questions why. She explains that he is coming there because of her request and asks if they are close. Kanji explains that back in college they were inseparable. Some things happen, but they remain good friends. Then, the man says that since they are both women, there won't be any awkwardness during the conversation. The girl is shocked that Honami is a woman. I was too. A flashy car pulls up in front of the young man's house. A very well-dressed woman gets out. Kanji doesn't know what to do because Chris is angry again. The pieces were starting to fit together, and with Honami's arrival, things went out of control again. Honami smiles and greets Chris. Then she asks where the knight is in a super awkward way, imitating what they do in fantasy movies. While the woman looks like a crazy person, Kanji apologizes to Chris for that inconvenience. Then she shouts for Honami to stop doing that and says that the knight is right in front of her. The woman stops and composes herself. Next, she tells Chris that she heard about her from Kanji and decided to meet her. There's a lot of tension in the air, and it's the first time the young man sees his friend in business mode. Chris apologizes for her outfit and says she already knows what happened. Then she introduces herself as Christiana Brunhild von Novus and says she belongs to the Western Order of Knighthood of the Kingdom of Urid. Next, she says it's a pleasure to meet the woman. Being very friendly, Hanami says the pleasure is hers, and Kanji hopes the woman continues to disguise her astonishment well. Chris tells the woman her entire story. She says that what she is saying matches what Kanji told her. Hanami says they should get straight to the point and asks if the girl can show her magic. The girl is confused and says she is already using magic so they can communicate. Even so, the woman says that is not enough proof that she came from another world. She needs something that can be seen, like a teleportation scroll that she mentioned. Then, she questions if it is possible to do that. Chris explains that she is a knight, so she cannot perform the big spells like those from the scroll. Her archmage friend was the one who wrote the magic circle of the scroll on special paper, and it is inside her armor. But now the circle is disappearing. Probably when she was attacked by the orcs, she unconsciously cast magic on herself. This might explain why she is there. The story is getting crazier for Honami. The woman has a strong interest in fantasy, orcs, knights, and such nonsense. But she manages to hide it and says she will rephrase her question. The woman asks if Chris can show a spell that a knight like her can use, and that everyone can see. The girl says she has no problem with that, but it cannot be done inside. They go outside in front of the house. Then the girl says not to expect too much from her. After all, she is a knight and not a mage, but Honami says that since they do not understand magic, they won't mind much. The girl says that this is one of the simplest spells. Then she waves her arm and releases a flame from her finger. After that, she extinguishes it and says that kind of thing is nothing special. Kanji and Honami are completely disturbed by that. The girl explains that she can also use some healing magic besides that basic spell. Then she notices that the two are standing there like two fools and shouts for them to say something. The Harry Potter book was the first novel that Honami read as a child. She was fascinated by the magic present in the book, often losing track of time while reading, and hoping to one day be able to use magic. Now, more than 10 years later, she is seeing real magic coming from a mysterious girl from another world who conjured a flame. Keeping calm, Honami says she thought the girl would need to recite some words to use magic, but it wasn't quite like that. Chris explains that incantations exist, but they can be omitted. In a battle, you won't have time to recite the spell. If a mage were reciting something, they would probably be the primary target. Honami asks if she can ask one more thing. Then she gets very excited and says she had an idea about magic, but it fell through. Now she wants to know about the different types of magic and how many times they can be used. Kanji calls the girl's attention and says there is still much to do, and he will be back in 2 hours. Honami says she doesn't mind, and Kanji leaves the girls alone. Chris is indignant because she wanted to go with him. The crazy girl throws herself on the other because she wants to know more about magic and is a blatant otaku. Honami asks if there are great sages or gods in the girl's world. In exchange, she can talk about kanji. Then Chris says there is something that is bothering her about kanji. On the day they met, the girl ended up sleeping in the bathtub and he took care of her, which is an embarrassing situation that worries her. Honami observes that the girl must have been terrified, but she denies it. Kanji kindly showed her things, and the next morning was concerned about her. However, for a woman from the Melvis household, exposing herself like that to someone who is not her husband is unforgivable. Honami notices that she is jealous of Kanji's development. When he was only 18 years old, she had just entered college. Then she met the boy who had no tact, was strange and stubborn. He stood up against things he disagreed with. Like that time, he did that for her own good. And even though he was weak, he was very stubborn. A real idiot. But he was the kindest of men. Even after all this time, he hasn't changed. Then Chris concludes that she has no choice but to kill the boy, leaving Honami shocked. The girl says that since he is a commoner, she has that right, and if they were in her country, that would be a common reaction. But maybe it's better to pretend that none of that happened, since Kanji also doesn't talk about that subject. Moreover, after getting to know him, she can say that he is the kindest of men. Honami agrees with her. Then she says there is nothing for the girl to worry about. She must be confused. It's probably not just about Kanji, since she ended up in a world where she knows nothing and feels lost. Honami sits in front of the girl and says she will be honest. Then she says she will try to talk to her superiors as much as she can and wants them to hear her story. But for that to happen, many things need to be resolved. This may take some time. Changing the subject abruptly, Honami says she will do everything to ensure that she becomes Kanji's fiancé, after laughing at that silly joke. Then she says that as a man, he is not bad because he has guts, and he takes care of his partner during all shifts. The girl looks confused, and Honami says the truth is that she dated Kanji a long time ago, but Chris doesn't understand what she is trying to say. Then the gossip whispers in the girl's ear all the outrageous things she did. Chuckling, Honami says she probably went a bit too far. Then she says she wants to film the girl using fire magic to show her boss. She tries to talk to Chris, but the girl is still out of it. Kanji returns home after work and hears the girls laughing inside. They seem to be having fun and full of gossip. He is happy to see the two getting along, and Chris turns her face away, trying to hide. The man asks Honami if she said anything unnecessary to the girl, and the woman says she is not sure. Then Chris asks if they ever dated. Honami says it's an old thing, so it should be fine to talk about it now. Kanji explains that they debuted in the past and are now good friends. The little girl is shocked. Chris is completely shocked that they did things without being married. Then she puts on a little show, cursing in her language. Later, inside the house, Honami says she is hungry. When Kanji tries to talk to Chris, she ignores him, turning her face away. The woman secretly asks Kanji to do something to cheer Chris up. The man steps away, saying he will prepare everything and they can rest. Honami offers to help. The two go to the kitchen together, laughing and chatting. Honami sees that Chris is dying of jealousy and asks if the girl wants to help, too. She says she will just get in the way. But the woman manages to convince the girl to come. Excited, the two ask what they will make, and Kanji replies that it will be curry. Honami gets excited, and Chris asks if that is some kind of fish, but the guy explains that it is not. When talking about curry, India is the first place that comes to mind, but one could say that this is a dish loved by all Japanese people. Honami agrees, and Chris observes that it is quite interesting. To start, they need to chop those vegetables. The two readily agree, and the man asks them to cut them into the largest sizes they can. The two are chopping, and Honami notices that Chris is very good at it. The girl replies that she was trained for this. Then she says that Honami, being a government official, is amazing, since most women only become someone's wives. The woman agrees, laughing. When they finish chopping, they take the pieces to Kanji. Honami observes that Kanji is making a cream with flour to thicken the broth. Since there is still a long way to go for the vegetables to finish cooking, he wants to make it special. After all, this is the first time Chris is eating curry. The man finishes preparing that delicious food. The three of them witness the moment when everything is ready, the curry and the rice. The smell is very pleasant, and Chris is hungry just from smelling it. Honami excitedly tells them to eat. They all sit at the table and give thanks. Honami observes that it is tasty and remembers the curry they have in the cafeteria at work. The man explains that he used the flavor of the curry served at school, the only thing he remembers from that time. Then Kanji tells Chris to try the curry and rice together. The girl brings the spoon to her mouth. As she remains silent, the man asks if she didn't like it. Chris says it is very tasty, but even though it is her first time eating that dish, it brought her a nostalgic feeling. Curry has that kind of power. Before leaving, Honami talks to Kanji about the girl being an extraterrestrial. Her germs and cells are unknown, and there is a good chance she carries a virus. Kanji says the woman already mentioned that on the phone, but she gets worked up about the situation. They were together for 3 days and nothing happened, which is a good sign, but they cannot let their guard down. Kanji thinks she would be all happy because of that situation, but the woman is acting calmly. She says she is self-aware like an otaku. Her hobbies and her work are different things. As someone who works for the government, she must say that if she is exposed to any danger in that country, she will be deported. For now, they should avoid touching other people, and this applies to exported vegetables. Kanji is outraged, but Honami explains that even she will be in quarantine for a week. Honami asks where Chris is, and the man explains that she is still hurt because of their past. Mockingly, the woman tells Kanji to ask Chris what the rules of the Melvis family are. Then the woman leaves, blushing. Kanji enters the house wondering what he will say to Yao. Then he talks to Chris that Honami has already left. The girl is upset for not having said goodbye to the woman. Then Kanji asks her what the rules of the Melvin family are. The girl remembers that rule. One of etiquette for ladies is that only her husband can see her wearing transparent clothes. Chris is outraged that Honami put her in that awkward position. Kanji says, but when the bathwater is hot, Chris can go first. He needs to make a work call. Chris says he will do that with his cell phone, and Honami talked about that technology where he can talk to people who are very far away, or use it to listen to music or take photos. Excited, the girl says that science is really useful. Later, Chris goes to take a hot bath. She has fun in the bathtub. Then she comes out determined to make Kanji explain that clearly. The boy is sad because Yao got angry. Then he is surprised that Chris appeared out of nowhere. The girl asks if he really doesn't have a girlfriend, and the man says no. Chris questions the yukata she is wearing, which was made for a woman. She asks who wore that before, and the man says no one. He'd bought it for his mother, although he hasn't given it to her yet. He is sure she would have liked it. She passed away shortly after. He didn't know if he should put the yukata in the coffin, so he just kept it with him until the clothes she would be buried in were decided. Chris is shaken by that explanation. Trying to lighten the mood, Kanji says he is happy that at least he could give that outfit to the girl. She apologizes and says he probably didn't want to talk about that. Kanji tells her not to worry because everyone dies. Some go before others, and that's all. Chris reflects that she is being insensitive and childish. Even with Kanji helping her, the girl is acting selfishly. The man gets up and says he will teach her how to use the hairdryer. He asks her to sit down and introduces the appliance to the girl. Then he asks if she minds him touching her hair. The man says that if she prefers, he can just teach her how to use it. Chris tells him she doesn't mind. After all, this is Japan. Kanji starts drying the girl's hair. He asks if it is too hot and she says no. Then the man observes that she has beautiful, fine, and soft hair, so it is easy to dry. Chris feels embarrassed. Rule 2 of etiquette for ladies is that as a single woman, allowing a man to touch her hair means the same as offering herself to him. Chris keeps trying to ease the situation, repeating that she is in Japan. After having her hair dried, the girl is impressed with how that technology works. Kanji says that starting the next day, she will be able to use the hairdryer by herself. But the girl is worried and says that the tools in Japan are scary. Then Kanji replies that he can dry it for her the next day. The girl feels embarrassed, but thanks him. Seeing that super romantic movie-like situation, the guy feels shy and leaves, saying he needs to take a shower. The man can't get the girl out of his head and is outraged because she is only 18 years old, so she is still a child. He doesn't understand why he is becoming so disturbed by all of this. Kanji opens the door and finds Chris sprawled on the floor, sleeping. He asks why she is sleeping there and tells the girl she will catch a cold. It is already late, but she seems very comfortable sleeping there. The boy calls out to her to try to wake the girl, but she turns to the other side, saying she is full and can't eat anymore. Kanji laughs because, after all, she is just a little girl. The next day, they wake up together, like a couple. When Kanji wakes up next to the girl, he is startled. He becomes worried because, although nothing happened, given how Chris understands a relationship, this could create a misunderstanding. Even her yukata is all messed up on her body. Now the man's concern is to remove his arm from under the girl without waking her up. In the midst of this process, he accidentally throws the girl hard onto the floor. She falls disheveled. Kanji tries to sneak away before she notices, but the girl calls out to him. Then she wishes him good morning, no longer wearing the yukata. The man responds with his back turned. Then the girl notices the whole situation. After that, the two come together and Chris asks if Kanji has something he would like to say. The man says it was a misunderstanding, and there is a reason for it. He wasn't thinking of attacking her, but it was inevitable. The girl draws her sword and starts swinging it, saying that it doesn't help to say that. The man leaves there completely scared. The girl chases him, saying that there are no excuses and she will cut him in half. Later, Kanji called Honami to share the gossip, and the woman was impressed that he managed to come out alive. His companion is truly a knight. The man keeps dramatizing, saying he had to beg several times for her to understand the situation, and it was a matter of life or death. Honami asks if he called her just to say that. Kanji says no. Apparently, the concept of underwear did not exist in Chris's world, and now she needs to wear some. That doesn't leave the man's mind, because despite trying to disguise it by giving her his coat when the girl is only wearing the yukata, he can't help but look. Honami asks if he can't order something online, and the man says that is an option. However, there is that thing about size, and he doesn't know what to do. Embarrassed by the situation, Honami hangs up. Later, Kanji approaches Chris asking if she has a minute. He questions if the girl is angry, and she replies that she realized she was misunderstood. Then, the guy asks her to take a look at his notebook for a bit. When the girl looks, a lingerie store is open. Chris feels embarrassed because the model posing has hair just like hers. Kanji observes that she is a model from another country. Then Chris says she solved the mystery. That idiot is gathering women from the kingdom of Urid. Again, the guy has to keep trying to explain that she is wrong and that this is the internet. But the girl says it doesn't help to talk because there are no excuses. She grabs her sword again and says that this time she will finish him off. Meanwhile, Honami sends an email. She reflects that the people in that government are very slow. But if they watch the video, even those stubborn ones will have to accept. But there is no need to rush. She thinks this will become a long battle. For now, she has plenty of time during her paid vacation. Since she doesn't need to worry about that, the girl decides to play. Far away, someone hits play on the video she recorded. Honami speaks in the background for Chris to show the flame. The girl lights it and asks if it's good. Then Honami says that this might not serve as evidence and could look like a trick. So the girl has to make it look like magic. Chris says she understands the situation. Then she generates an incredible fireball. The girl tells the woman to look closer and divides that ball into different parts. Chris manages to move them separately as she wishes. She can also juggle the flames. One of the fireballs heads towards Honami. The foam falls to the ground. Chris apologizes for being careless. Then she helps Honami to stand up again. In Tokyo, a man from the immigration department watches that video. Honami reflects that if Chris came from another world, it is possible that she carries an unknown virus. The woman does research online. She observes an outbreak of foot and mouth disease that occurred and caused many crises. The woman spends days on this research and wonders if they will contact her soon. It has been a week since Chris arrived from another world, and now a truck has entered the village of Mitsuyama, where Kanji lives. Chris is at home, impressed with the world map. She says that this is a very elaborate map, and questions why a farmer has something like that. Kanji points on the map to where they are at that moment. The girl observes that Japan is quite small. The boy points to Europe and says that the people who look like the girl live around there. In that ancestral world, they are called Homo sapiens, and currently, they know a lot of things thanks to genetics and genome analysis. Chris didn't understand anything he said, but believes it's all thanks to science. Suddenly, the doorbell rings. The girl questions what that sound is. The boy says it's a visitor and probably the neighbor with some news. The man opens the door, and a suspicious person asks if this is the residence of Seiki Kanji. The man confirms. Then, the boy says he is there for a delivery. At that moment, Kanji remembers he was expecting something. He then shouts to Chris that her orders have arrived. The girl is impressed by the size of those items. The man tries to explain roughly how she can close those clothes. Chris fumbles to manage to close a bra. Then Kanji shows her how it should be done. The boy looks silly with that bra over his shirt. He complains that the girl is making fun of him, and she says it must be a joke. Going so far as to give new clothes to a guest like her must be something significant for a farmer, since that probably cost a lot. Kanji says that in this world, clothes aren't that expensive. Later, Chris is wearing a loose shirt and the bra and is impressed. Kanji asks how she feels. The girl says very well, as it helps her maintain good posture. The boy is happy for her, and the girl is also satisfied. That was another peaceful day in the village. While Kanji works on the laptop, the girl continues to be interested in the world map. He reflects that Honami told them to stay home as much as possible, and she still hasn't contacted them. Then Kanji remembers he contacted the delivery guy and wonders if he should talk to Honami. Chris calls for Kanji, and he leaves the laptop, leaving the tab open with news about a gravity field in Europe. A few days have passed, and August has arrived. Honami calls Kanji and says she managed to convince her boss, but now she needs to convince his boss. She has already sent a compensation request for the boy's work and will ensure the girl passes. Now she needs him to hold on a little longer. In the end, there hasn't been much progress, and 2 weeks have already passed. For small and medium farms, trust is the most important thing. If the shipments simply stop, the problem for Yao is likely significant. Overall, the only relief for the boy is that Chris is finally getting used to that world. She is harvesting happy things in the field. Excited, the girl tells them to load the truck. Kanji observes the leaves and notices they are sick. The girl gets scared, and he explains that weather conditions like sun, rain, or anything else can cause that. Plant diseases can be mold or viruses. If they are molds, pesticides can be used to recover a bit. When they show the slightest symptoms, it's fine to cut them. If the disease continues, it's better to get rid of them. Chris asks if the mold reached the root. Kanji notes that it hasn't and says that it's probably yellow aster. If a disease with yellow and brown spots that spread, in the end, if it's a virus, there's no way to treat it. The boy is thoughtful, and Chris observes that there's nothing to be done for those plants. Kanji remembers something. He says that Chris had mentioned she has healing magic. He asks if, besides people and animals, it can be used on plants. The girl says that it doesn't change their life expectancy, but it can be used. Kanji gets excited, saying that this means Chris can cure the disease. The girl tries to talk to him, but the man is too excited about the idea of having organic and perfect vegetables. Chris explains that the magic isn't that convenient. What human magic can do is reduce fatigue or close a wound more quickly. The man is sad that it's only that. She says that if a person loses an arm or a leg in battle, there's nothing that can be done. In her country, many people lost limbs during battles. They can return to the front lines, but most will work in a temple. Kanji is curious about this temple, and the girl explains that it's the place where children go. These people lost something from their bodies, but they can still help those children by reading to them or making copies of books. Kanji observes that it's like a school. Despite everything in her country, a person cannot choose what to do. Even with perfect health, you don't choose your social condition or job. They are given to you. That's why she can't help him with magic. The man reflects that he had been seeing her as a child until then. However, she lived in her country for 18 years, facing the reality there. Time passes and Chris asks what they are going to do, because she is excited to help. The man observes that they have harvested several bell peppers and says he will make stuffed peppers with meat. The girl questions what that is, and he tells her she will see soon. Chris continues helping, chopping things. The girl even learned to chop onions without crying. Meanwhile, Kanji seasons the meat. When Chris finishes, he asks her to fill the peppers without leaving any gaps. They work together to make several stuffed peppers. Kanji explains that with the meat facing down in the pan, they have to be careful not to burn it. Chris comments that it has a sweet smell, and the man notes that the smell of meat is indeed tempting. The peppers are ready and the rice is too. Then the meal is served. Chris is happy with the variety of colors and says everything looks delicious. The two eat very happily. The girl says that it is delicious, but Kanji notices that she is lying. Then the girl says, it is not bad, but the tingling sensation is strange and the taste of okra is slimy. The man observes that he made things to his taste and needs to be more careful. Okra is an expensive vegetable that makes your skin more beautiful, but since she doesn't like it, there is nothing to be done. After hearing this, Chris eats the okra again and says that now it doesn't seem so bad. Next, Kanji says that the peppers are also very nutritious and good for the skin, and that the meat inside them is very expensive. Chris starts eating everything happily and satisfied. Kanji observes Chris in her daily life, washing the dishes and helping him around the house. His daily life has completely changed. At night, they now sit together looking at the sky while Kanji smokes. The girl observes that in the sky of that world there is also a moon. She comments that the nights would be difficult there without the light of that celestial body. The man remarks that Lady Moon is doing a great job. Chris is confused by him calling the Moon Lady. Then, Kanji explains that in Japan, many legends are associated with the moon. The girl is impressed. A few moments pass, and Kanji asks if she wants to light fireworks. He searches and brings some for her. His plan was to use them when Honami came over, since he had many, but Chris doesn't even know what fireworks are. Then, the man shows her the packaging. He lights one so the girl can pay attention. A spark begins to come out of that stick. Kanji gets very excited about it. It shines, illuminating the area more. Chris notices that it is very beautiful. Then, she gets scared when suddenly, the flame goes out. The man says he has several left and asks if she wants to try using some. The girl gets excited and starts pointing those fireworks up. She is animated and even starts spinning with that thing in her hand. So excited, the girl ends up tripping and falling. Yumi-in, she had a lot of fun with those fireworks. Kanji hands her the last one. The girl likes it and he feels happiness. It is only after losing that you discover the meaning of happiness. The girl who came from another world, and the middle-aged man who quit his salaried job. Two people whose paths would never cross ended up meeting and brought an unexpected result. They shone like the fireworks. Looking back, that was the last night Kanji and Chris were at peace. The next morning, heavy rain began to fall. Far away, Honami leaves her house and thanks someone for waiting for her. 3 hours earlier, Kanji was worried about the rain. Chris questions whether the rain is not a blessing for the crops. The man says that when it rains a lot, it is the opposite. The harvest depends on the weather, so it naturally has a big impact on income. Moreover, it will rain for an entire week. Kanji saw this in the weather forecast. The girl asks what that is. The young man says that thanks to things like satellites, they can predict the weather. Chris says that again he spoke Greek, but it is the power of science. Suddenly, the notebook loses signal. Kanji's phone rings. He tells Honami that it is too early for her to call. The woman says that Chris's exam was moved up. Kanji is terrified because they never even scheduled a date. Honami apologizes and says that this was decided with the Minister of Relations. The man says that at least they believed she comes from another world. Honami says that half of them do, but there are those who didn't believe until they saw her, and there is something they also want to confirm. She seems to be someone from the West, but they want conclusive evidence that she doesn't have dangerous thoughts. Kanji is startled by that. The woman says she will meet with them and provide all the details soon. At that moment, the signal around the village is completely out of reach, and the call drops. Worried, Chris asks what happened. The man explains that, since her body is from another world, she might carry some germ or virus. The girl becomes concerned, and Kanji tries to calm the situation, saying it's just a possibility. The girl stands up and says she is like Ricardo, the adventurer. It's a fairy tale from the kingdom of Urid. Long ago, Ricardo the adventurer and his expedition found an island that didn't appear on maps. When they met the natives, they quickly got along, but a few days later, that changed. Out of nowhere, his companions began to die one by one, becoming frightened. Ricardo and his group returned to the continent. However, the deaths continued to occur. Kaji notes that it was a pandemic and says she doesn't need to continue because they should try to calm down by drinking tea. The two start drinking tea to try to relax, but the girl is tense. The man says they have been together for 2 weeks and nothing has happened. She will undergo a simple medical examination and should tell her story. That will be all. For that country, she is a special existence. Perhaps they will prepare an apartment for her to live in the metropolitan area. That is what he hopes. Then he will be able to visit her from time to time. Chris is astonished and asks if she can't stay working there. The man becomes nervous and the girl quickly tells him not to worry because it's a joke. She is a knight, but that is meaningless in that world. In a way, it's the same as being dead. Kanji is indignant and asks if the story about knights losing their limbs was a lie. The girl says that you continued living in that world, gritted your teeth, and moved on. The man says he genuinely found that impressive. He respects that tradition, and she shouldn't say so easily that she feels dead. The atmosphere becomes heavy. Chris suddenly starts laughing. Kanji asks why she is laughing, and the girl apologizes. She was wondering if that was the way the guy was trying to comfort her. The two start laughing like fools at the situation. Kanji says he is sure everything will be fine and that it will soon be over. A car approaches their house. Apparently, Honami has arrived and Chris hasn't seen her in a long time. They open the door excitedly, but when they look outside, they see several people wearing intensive protective gear. Kanji and Chris are shocked. Then Honami says she came to get them. When something beyond their understanding happens, people stop in their tracks. However, the cruel hand of the clock keeps moving. The roads around the village have been blocked for prevention and the site inspection is ready. The remaining communications have been cut off until Chris is in their custody. That case is under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Health and Welfare. They will take custody of the girl. Kanji is terrified and says that this is very sudden. Honami says she was also surprised. In the past, Japan was very slow to take anti-epidemic measures, like during the bird flu and other diseases, such as dengue. Even so, he shouldn't worry. The country will cover all losses, including Yao's. Chris asks if those people are government officials and says their attire is strange. She concludes that she needs to go with them, but Kanji says he is trying to understand the situation. Hanami observes that this is not just for prevention, and the man remembers that she said they wanted to confirm something else. The woman says that in recent years, there have been numerous records of climate anomalies and natural disasters, generally speaking, mysterious events around the globe. Most occurred in Europe. The cause is still unknown, but due to electromagnetic waves, basic services stopped functioning. Kanji says he imagined something like that could happen. Hanami is silent for a moment and says that this is confidential, so she cannot provide details. An international organization has shown interest in the video she made. Kanji questions if this is about magic, and Honami says yes, but the fact that she came from another world opens up infinite possibilities. Still, the bigger problem now is preventing an epidemic, and this seems like a science fiction movie. He can think of everything as an illusion if he wants, but it is reality. For now, Chris will be taken to a hospital for examinations and should remain calm, because nothing bad will happen and they will keep her safe. The man begins to get agitated, but the girl makes him stop. Chris says she understands and will go with them. That is Japan, and she must follow the orders of the government officials there. Moreover, Hanami is speaking, so there is no reason to worry. The woman thanks Chris for her trust. Then she says that Kanji will also be examined. Even so, they will not stay in the same room, since they are a man and a woman, but he will also be in an isolation ward. The man begins to understand the situation and thanks Honani for the compensation for the cultivation. However, he does not plan to leave the land that way and asks if it is possible to delay it a bit. Honami says that this is out of the question. The preparations have been made on a national scale. Additionally, she will be hospitalized along with them, Yao too, and the delivery person who brought them clothes. Kanji tries to argue that they only met briefly, but Honami says that this is very dangerous because he has already been in contact with 236 other people. The delivery person has been in contact with several people up until that day, and everyone will be quarantined in their homes. This means taking anti-epidemic measures. The man tries to argue that he wants to stay in the same room as Chris because she came from another world, and they are the only people she has. Kanji begs Honami to let him stay next to the girl. She stops in front of everyone and says that she is a knight, and taking care of herself is no problem at all. Moreover, she wants to go to the cities of Japan for a little trip. There is nothing there, and helping with the farm is boring. She also wants to try the city food. Looking at Kanji, Chris says she will be fine. The man observes that she is really terrible at lying. Later, the three went to the hospital. Chris reflects that some time ago, when Kanji took her to the city, she was surprised when he said it wasn't a real city. But now she understands how impressive that world is. Even though it hasn't been half a day since they separated, she has only been thinking about him. However, she is doing well, and he has nothing to worry about. She is in front of a completely isolated corridor and reflects that she can no longer complain. She is proud as a knight of the kingdom of Uridio. The girl enters one of the isolation rooms. Someone knocks on the door and enters. A woman says it is a pleasure to meet Chris. She says that the three of them will attend to all her needs during the girl's stay. She says she appreciates the care, but can manage on her own. The three bow, saying they are very sorry. It is a rule, so they cannot leave her. Chris says she understands and asks them to raise their heads. The woman tells her to treat the others well. The girl asks if Kanji and the others are in that hospital, and the woman replies that yes, but in different wards. Chris asks if it was really necessary for them to have gone in different cars. Smiling, the woman says they cannot explain as it would break the rules. Those people are a bit difficult to deal with. The woman says that Chris is probably tired from the trip, but they would like her to undergo a simple physical examination. The girl remembers when Kanji talked about physical exams and blood draws. The three women there say they will bring a meal for them as soon as they finish. The girl says she's looking forward to the city food. One of them hands her a small cup and says they will start with the urine test. She must fill that cup up to the red line. Chris is confused and asks what that is for. The woman says they need to examine her health condition. They will help her if she needs it. The girl goes to the bathroom and thinks, because she can't pee all of a sudden. It is the third day of hospitalization, and a man says he will give the report regarding Chris, the main subject of the village. As she stated, the girl has a family consisting of her mother, and her older brother. This is all the information about the kingdom of Urid, and according to the anti-epidemic measures provided by law, they conducted blood and urine tests 3 times a day. So far, nothing abnormal has been found. The next topic is the investigation of the mysterious phenomenon called magic. The magical translation of the language is still unclear. For the ignition phenomenon, a test using 3D thermography was used, with results obtained using a scientific method. It was concluded that this magic ignores the law of mass preservation, and, at the moment, it is impossible to explain. Everyone there is shocked that magic is real, and the girl is from another world. The man says that there are still many unknown factors and gathering more checks is essential. Furthermore, regarding her healing ability, some results were confirmed in experiments with rats. They are concerned that this could be an international problem and reflect on informing the organization in advance. For anti-epidemic measures, a stricter medical follow-up must be conducted. The man mentions that there is something interesting in her statement about Ricardo, the adventurer. Ricardo and his group landed in an unexplored land and came into contact with the natives. One by one, they contracted a contagious disease and died. Even though Ricardo fled back to his land, he was already infected. They are in what seems to be a modern witch trial. The girls who take care of Triss enter the room. Happily, the woman says that the lunch of the day is the pasta she ordered. The smell is great, which whets the appetite. The food is probably the only pleasant thing there. The girl brings the fork to her mouth and melts with joy. The spaghetti with ground meat and tomato sauce surprised the girl. Chris remembers how Kanji was shocked that she was eating so much. The first dish she made with him was pasta. They have cooked together several times since then. Chris remembers them in the field talking about fresh vegetables. Then she recalls other moments they spent together. The girl hopes that Kanji is okay. Someone enters the room and asks if they can speak with the ladies who are there. They step out for a moment and Chris says she will be eating until they return. It is already day 4 of hospitalization. Now there is a curtain between Chris and the women. The girl asks what that is, and the woman says it is an order from the superior and that she will stay on that side. They will conduct blood and urine tests at that moment. Afterward, they perform the healing magic verification test with rats. Chris observes that these are not the same rats she healed the day before. The woman says that they are indeed not, and the girl questions why. Then, the girl is placed inside an MRI machine and examined in every possible way. When it ends, Chris is excited for dinner but finds out she cannot eat because she has a gastrointestinal exam to undergo. The days go by with the same routine as always. The girl is tired, and it is already day 10 of hospitalization. When the woman approaches to say good morning, she asks if Chris slept well. The girl says she is fine. Then they go for the blood sample. Chris's arm is already all bruised from the needle pricks she receives daily. On the first day, the girl was outraged that they would use a syringe with a needle to draw her blood. At that time, they had to try several times until they managed to draw it because the girl wouldn't relax. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the woman asked if Chris finished her meal, but the girl barely touched her lunch. Chris says she couldn't eat, but drank orange juice. Then the woman decides to explain to Chris that what they are doing is different from a normal hospitalization. They are examining the girl's body, and she is in good health. Chris says that the woman has already talked about that several times. Then the woman gets straight to the point and says that in this way, tests will continue. To avoid this, the girl needs to eat properly and make an effort to sleep well. The woman even offers some sleeping pills to Chris, and the girl says she is scared. Then she reveals that she had a dream 2 days ago, where she saw Kanji and Homami sick because of her and suffering. The girl feels unhappy and wonders if they are okay. She begs to be told about it, and the woman says she cannot because of the rules. Then Chris gets angry and shouts that everything is rules, and this irritates her. Now she wants to leave. In the moment of tension, the girl throws the woman to the ground. The atmosphere there becomes terrible. In the nursing room, the woman who takes care of Chris is on the phone with a man. Later, she knocks on the girl's room door. Chris takes the opportunity to apologize, and the woman asks her not to worry about it. She extends the cell phone and says she has an urgent call for the girl. The girl notices that she recognizes the cell phone because she saw Hunami using one. Someone is on the line on that phone and speaks with Chris. The girl takes a moment to realize that it is Kanji's voice. She repeats the boy's name several times while he asks the girl to calm down, but Chris feels that it has been a long time since they last saw each other. Kanji says it has only been 10 days, but it's normal for it to feel longer since that room is very small and there's nothing to do. Chris looks around and comments that her room is huge. Kanji asks if the girl is okay, and she says she is totally fine, even though she is at her limit wanting to escape from there. Chris says it is very comfortable, and she gets 3 meals. Plus, she takes naps during the day. But the truth is that she doesn't want to stay in that cold room and hopes Kanji will save her. The man notices the situation and apologizes to the girl. She is a terrible liar and feels guilty because she made Kanji stay hospitalized too. The boy asks if she has seen the moon. The girl is confused, and the woman says there is a beautiful full moon in the sky. Chris says she hasn't seen it because it is always raining. Kanji questions if she has kept the curtains closed all that time. When the girl looks at the sky, she notices that the moon is there, looking beautiful. Kanji asks if that moon looks like the one from her world, and Chris says it seems more beautiful there because there are no stars around. Then the girl says that the bathrooms there are also amazing, and everyone starts laughing at that silly observation. That night, Chris had another dream. Kanji and she were adventurers, traveling the world, and no one encountered misfortune. It was the happy ending of Ricardo, the adventurer only she knew. It was the end of August. The exams had finished after 3 weeks, and the village's anti-epidemic team was dismissed. Even so, what welcomed him were weeds. Their foliage covered his entire field, which he had worked so hard to care for. To make matters worse, it even seems like a typhoon passed through there. Even his artichokes died. He observes that if he had known he would be hospitalized, he would have done that more carefully. Then he notices that the root is still there, which means he can harvest 50%. This is the time to harvest summer vegetables. However, he gave up at first sight. Kanji looks at his entire plantation taken over by weeds. Later, the boy goes to smoke a cigarette and observes that it is a relief that they haven't spread chemicals that harm the human body around there without preventing him from planting. Kanji goes to his house and decides to take a look at his personal garden. It is completely destroyed. The man begins to lose hope when he finds an intact ginger. He celebrates while making a silly joke. Behind him, Chris says he sounds more optimistic with those bad jokes. When he looks back, he realizes that the girl was never there. He remembers Chris and feels the longing. The next day, the situation took a sudden turn. It is easier to say that one will identify a virus that does not exist in that world than to actually do it. Detecting a pathogen that has not yet shown symptoms means endless repetition of tests. The mobilization of national universities, hospitals, and research centers in Japan was decided. Kanji finds Honami in despair. The girl greets him and says it has been a while and she's happy to see him, but the boy is not satisfied, and a verdict was reached that morning. Honami apologizes for not having visited him upon his release. The man is worried about the whole situation and says he never thought he would return to the hospital so soon. The two meet in a meeting room. Honami says that the conclusion, genuinely, is not different from the humans of that world. So, Chris is a Homo sapiens. Kanji questions if the girl is from that world, and Honami says that everything from that point on is merely theory. The place she is from exists in another time and space, a world in another parallel universe. Kanji observes that it is hard to believe in a science fiction outcome, but even among theoretical physicists, that possibility is discussed. Honami comments that 3 things led to that verdict. First, the confirmation of the herpes virus, the thing that brings chickenpox and shingles. It seems she contracted a similar disease when she was a child, and the existence of another disease was also confirmed during the investigation, which leads her to the next point, the confirmation of parasites. Before the war, the Japanese also had that, thanks to the manure used in crops. With the use of human feces for crop growth, the vegetables became more nutritious, but also brought many problems, such as parasites. Although they examined the parasites inside Chris's body, they are not the same as the parasites found in Japan. Kanji remembers when the girl said she wasn't fond of raw foods, and Honami comments that she had never received antibiotics. And finally, regarding the existence of magic and mythical beasts, they decided to save their resources. But some scholars say that orcs, goblins, and barbarians appeared hundreds of thousands of years ago. Her magic ignores the law of conservation of mass, so the scientists threw in the towel. Magic is an existence beyond science, but the most incredible thing was the magical body enhancement. Chris can use superhuman strength to do whatever she wants. Kanji concludes that he was lucky to have escaped death with the girl. The two walk down the hallway, and Honami says that when dealing with the pathogenesis of a world where magic exists, they cannot predict that if they use the same countermeasures, they will work. However, the conclusion was that if that is the case, there will be no country on Earth that can handle the situation. Therefore, Chris's release was finally decided. The man observes that all of this was a bit exaggerated, but the woman says it's better to be safe than sorry. They go to the isolation room. The nurse taking care of Chris says she will guide them inside the room. Worried, Kanji asks if she is okay, and the woman says she is mentally tired and needs some counseling. Kanji is shocked that there is so much security for the girl's room. He enters and is shocked that the room is huge. Chris sits up startled upon hearing his voice. They finally reunite. Honami teases them, saying it's the incredible reading in between the prince and the princess, and that they should kiss already. Chris is excited because if they are there, it means the exams are over. The next day, she will be transferred to the general ward. Now she should take some time to rest. Chris comments that the last thing she wants to do is rest, but she understands that it's the rules, and after seeing the woman without a mask, she feels more relieved. Kanji observes that Chris seems to be cheerful. She says she is fine and healthy, the meals were delicious, although she is out of shape and feels like moving her body. Chris gets shy, and Honami and the nurse run out to leave the couple alone. The atmosphere becomes super awkward for the two. Then, Chris says she is happy that Kanji is okay. He comments that now it's just the two of them and she doesn't need to force herself. The girl mentions that it was harder than she thought. The whole time, she thought about her fallen companions. She failed as a knight and feels pathetic. Kanji acts affectionately, holding her hand. It's been a while since she felt the warmth of another person. Kanji comments that she must have felt lonely there. Even so, everything is fine now. Chris panics and screams that she doesn't want to stay there anymore. She wants to go back to her home, her father, her mother, and her brother. She hates the fact that Kanji can't help her. The man hugs the girl in a desperate gesture. He tells her that he is there for her, and the girl starts to cry like a child. She screams for the man not to joke with her. Then she begins to melt against the young man's chest. On the other side of the wall, Honami and the nurse are listening to everything. The nurse started crying like a baby. Then she says she remembered all kinds of things and thinks she failed as a nurse. Honami tries to console her. The next day, Chris is looking out the window while waiting. Honami enters and asks what she thinks of her new room. The girl replies that it's easier to pass the time there, and she likes to hear the voices of the children. Chris starts looking for something, and Honami says that Kanji went home because he is desperate about his field. After the girl leaves there, she will stay with Honami in a place called a hotel. The woman is very excited because they will be accompanied and treated by the super VIP. Although Chris doesn't know what that means, thinking about staying with Honami is reassuring. Honami hugs Chris, saying that she is very cute. Then she says, "If not like they will always be together since the woman is an adult and has a lot to do." Chris says she understands and that it would be better if the woman decided to get married soon. Then Honami says she has some options. After they stop living together, the girl can find housing in Tokyo while collaborating on the investigation about magic. That way, she can live independently, or she can do something else. It has been a month since Kanji left the hospital and he has been working like crazy. He chose the vegetables for disposal, restored the soil, and took care of everything. At another moment, Honami asked Kanji why he didn't call, when she mentioned that the girl might be carrying a pathogen. The man says it's a hard story to believe, and while they lived together, nothing happened. Then, he asks Honami to take good care of Chris. The woman is shocked and says she thought the man would take her with him, but Kanji doesn't think it's appropriate for her to live with a middle-aged farmer. The woman questions why he said he was there if he didn't plan to stay by her side. There was probably a big misunderstanding there. At home, Kanji smokes his little cigarette while looking at his restored garden. Later, he makes his prayers and prepares a meal. The man continues to hear Chris's voice around the house. While tending to the garden, Kanji also sees the girl around. Practically everything reminds him of her. Kanji's phone rings and he answers. On the other end, Honami is upset because she tried to call him several times. The woman explains that she will meet Yao the next day because she has to resolve the conversation issue. Additionally, she also needs to apologize for what happened. Yao was hospitalized, and on the 10th day, he fell ill due to his weak health. It was the same day Chris and he spoke on the phone. Kanji says he has apologized directly many times, but he will go there as well. Honami thanks him and says that will help a lot. Before the woman hangs up, Kanji asks if Chris is doing well. The woman says she has been making a lot of progress adapting to their world. The man questions if the girl will go there the next day, and Honami asks if he's finally ready to take care of her. Finding that funny, Honami hangs up on him and concludes that soon the man will be put under some kind of spell. The man can't stop thinking about Chris. Even though he sees her once a month for checkups, he doesn't know what to say or do. The man thinks of ways to pamper the girl with clothes, a beauty salon, and food. Kanji sees Chris standing behind him, wearing a hat and a dress. Honami is on the road in her car. Finding the situation cute, Chris has changed and is much more beautiful. Kanji welcomes her back. The girl apologizes for appearing so suddenly and surprising him. Then she questions if her clothes are strange. The man says she looks cute and it suits her. Then he asks if it was Honami's idea. Chris says she owes Honami because she taught her a lot about that world. She also explained about her hometown, Uridi, but no matter how many times she commented on it, Chris couldn't understand. Kanji laughs and says he didn't understand either. Then he looks for Honami. Chris says he is wrong and she is there of her own free will. She wanted to stay with him a little longer. The farmer observes that since they met, he has only had problems. First, he was hospitalized, then he returned, and his field was ruined. The girl starts with some chivalry talk and blah 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 when her hat flies off. Kanji rushes like a fool to get the girl's hat. She apologizes, and he says she doesn't need to. The man just wants her to help him with the farm and the kitchen. That day, a night appeared suddenly. A lot has happened since then. There were also painful moments, but Chris returned to her home. Meanwhile, in Chris's world, between Ureed and the stronghold Mazengate, lies the Black Forest. A figure gallops searching for Chris. In the kingdom of Ureed, there is a knight named Hero, a god of war, with blue eyes and long golden hair, who wears armor and carries a spear. A girl calls for Bartolomeu and says that the rain is getting fierce, and they should give up for the day. Bartolomeu tells Louise to go back first and then advances into the forest. He is sure that Chris is alive. That man is the girl's older brother, the hero of the kingdom of Ureed. They are in the year 362 of the Uridian calendar, between 3 and 5 in the morning, in the domain of the kingdom of Ureed. Soldiers are being defeated by the enemies. The stronghold Mazengate has been completely destroyed. Reinforcements have not yet arrived, and even if any of the messengers manage to reach the capital, they will have to wait 2 days. The knights have been struck by despair. However, none of them thought about dying without fighting. Besides the stronghold, there was their homeland, the kingdom of Uridi, a place where their loved ones lived, Friends, families, lovers, former companions who could no longer fight prayed for their safety every day, as that was the only thing they could do for them. Meanwhile, the soldiers could not afford to die like that. The fortress wall is destroyed. A wild giant enters the place. He grabs the commander, destroying the man. The number of savages outside the fort continued to increase, totaling approximately 5,000. The man pleaded for God to save him, and at the moment the prayer left the knight's heart, the roar of thunder could be heard. Savages flew through the air, and the hero appeared among them atop his horse. He easily destroyed the enemies. Then he entered the fort and saw that giant. Without any fear, Bartholomeus charged at the giant and attacked. A god of war named Hero, at 23 years old. Bartholomeus apologizes for the delay. The next day, about 8,000 men arrived and all the savages were exterminated. Once again, his heroic tale grows with another legend. Commander Sidler asks if the man is looking for Christina. First of all, he thanks for having his life saved and says that Chris was sent as a messenger and must be in the capital. At that moment, Bartholomeus was happy that his sister was safe. However, she never arrived in the capital or at their family home. Her whereabouts are unknown. A month later, the kingdom decided to search for her as a deserter. Bartholomeus already knew it would go wrong from the moment she said she would become a knight like him. He was obviously against it, but the parents respected her decision. Chris knew she was a woman, but since her brother wanted to become a knight to protect that country, and before her brother knew it, he also ended up respecting her decision. Even so, he already knew that, for the good of their country. One day, Christiana's life could be cut short. Bartholomeus drinks in a bar in the city and refuses to believe that his sister is dead. He orders more beer and gets drunk. Louise approaches and says he looks quite exhausted and that she has been looking for him for a long time. Bartholomeus mocks her, asking if the child got lost. Indignant, Louise asks the bartender to give her beer too. When she grabs it to drink, the glass is almost bigger than the girl. Louise says she heard about Christiana. Then she comments that the king is also worried about Bartholomeus. He said that the man hasn't been around much lately. Not wanting to talk, Bartholomeus says he is leaving, and Louise asks him to wait. Some drunks appear, outraged that there will be a fight between a man and a child. The drunk tries to provoke Louise, but the girl decides to just ignore it. Meanwhile, Bartholomeus turns to leave. Louise is indignant because he left before she got to the main point. Everyone is impressed when they realize that this is Bartholomeus, the hero of that country. The drunk shouts at Bartholomeus that he does not accept him. Then he says that the hero is just an arrogant brat of 23 years. The weirdo says that the truth of what happened at the fort regarding his sister is that Bartholomeus left the guard of His Majesty to save her, and she abandoned her duty as a soldier. Barbarizing, the drunk shouts that she ran away with some guy from another country, and that's what happens when you let women become knights. Suddenly, everyone there starts to float, not understanding what is happening. The one doing that is Louise, with her magic. The girl says that Christina is her precious friend. There are few women in the national school, and she was discriminated against as if that were natural to do. When it seemed she was at her limit, it was Christina who extended her hand to her. That's why Louise is not willing to allow anyone to insult her or for the hero who saved the country many times to be belittled. Bartholomeus says that's enough. The people there are astonished to realize that this is Lady Louise, the person with the greatest magical power in the history of the kingdom of Urid. She's the young prodigy arcanist, imperial mage of the first rank. The girl cancels her magic and everyone falls to the ground. Bartholomeus continues to leave when Louise shouts that Christina is alive. Bartolomeu asks her to tell him everything she knows. They go to the Magic Research Institute of Urid. The girl says she got permission from the Majesty and that he must keep silent about everything inside that tower. The two walk inside the place. Bartholomeus asks what those glowing orbs are. Louise explains that it is a source of magic and spirits. The lamps in that place are refined using spiritual stones. Bartholomeus says he doesn't understand the meaning of that, and Louise comments that basically they are their lifelights created by their spirits. The girl shows Bartholomeus Christina's spirit still shining. If it is still shining, it means Christina is alive. Meanwhile, the girl is there taking a bath, happy as can be. At Kanji's house, Honami is getting drunk. The girl started to get super drunk and talking in a slurred manner. So, Honami asks if Kanji will make Chris happy, and the man comments that he wants to do that and will work hard for it to happen. When the man leaves the room, the woman is indignant because she is biting her lip with envy, as an 18-year-old girl managed to get a guy and she did not. Then the woman decides to tell the guides at the university temple, who are still single, and the guides from his former company about him. Kanji asks Chris how the water temperature is, and the girl says she feels great. She had to get used to the shower in the hospital and the hotel, and Kanji is happy that she likes the hot tub. The girl says that hot baths are a true wonder. You soak in, and it feels like all your fatigue disappears. The man tells her to try not to fall asleep, like on the first day. The girl comments that the city's science is amazing. They have stairs that move on their own, transports that fly through the air like birds, and structures larger than mountains. Anywhere she looked, there was something surprising, but what she found most breathtaking was the night view. It felt like she was in the land of dreams. Only a limited number of people can use magic. On the other hand, anyone can use science. Kanji says this reminds him that Honami dreamed of having magic when she was a child. Chris is surprised, and the man explains that people from that world cannot use magic, but the girl disagrees. She asks if he has ever seen spirits, and Kanji replies that he does not believe in that. Then, Chris explains that she has an older brother who also has no magic, but the spirits shared their magic with him, and now he is able to use it. Kanji questions if that means he would be able to use magic if he saw a spirit, and the girl says that, for some reason, she thinks it is almost impossible for him. Suddenly, the young man hears a sound coming from inside the house and becomes worried. He rushes in, and when he arrives, Chris is holding Honami in her arms, saying that the woman hit her head. Very drunk, the woman apologizes for eavesdropping. Then, Chris remembers the outfit she's wearing and feels embarrassed. Kanji tries to explain himself, but she leaves before he can say anything. A lot of things happen, but it seems they have returned to the beginning. Kanji looks at his phone and sees 86 new messages. The messages are from people saying that Honami told them about the 18-year-old blonde girl. Chris is eating a slightly sweet omelet. The girl comments that it looks like Kanji's food and is delicious. Seeing that the young man is impressed, she asks what it was, and he says he was thinking that she can use chopsticks now. The girl says she needed to learn since she will be living around here. Even so, the girl's manners at the table are still like those of a child. Kanji notices that Honami has not woken up yet, and Chris gets up angrily. The girl goes after Honami, cursing her and telling her to get up. The two are there fighting in the room. Honami complains that her head is spinning because she drank too much. Even so, it is different from the usual hangover, where she has that burning pain in her forehead. Chris serves a cup of tea to Honami. After drinking, the girl feels alive again. Kanji asks her if they don't need to meet Yao at 9 o'clock. The woman tells him not to worry because she has already put the toppings on the rice. Now they just need to add miso soup, mix it all together, and eat. Kanji thanks Honami for taking care of Chris and teaching her things. Honami replies that it is nothing special. Then she realizes that since she got drunk and went to bed early, the two were alone there all night. The woman throws herself on Chris. Then she says that the two are like sisters, while Kanji panics. Chris is confused and asks if it is like the promise you make to your sworn brother before marching into battle. Honami says it is not and says she will explain in detail, but Kanji stops her. Then the man shouts that nothing special happened. The woman says that nothing happening is even worse. Then she asks if the man does not see Chris as a woman, and he gets nervous. Kanji says that Chris means a lot to him, but she comes from a different world, with another culture, and although he likes her, he would not call it love. Moreover, Chris is still 18 years old and he is her guardian. Honami says he does not need to worry about that because, in that world, Chris is officially 20 years old. They registered her as an adult since she was a minor for the procedures. The girl was naturalized as a Japanese citizen from a European country. Kanji questions whether that could cause diplomatic issues, but Honami says that the Foreign Affairs Ministry works very well and they know how to make deals and hide things. The existence of Triss and the existence of magic is a big deal. If they are able to understand magic, the whole world could become very different. Kanji waits outside and notices that the woodmen are taking too long. Then, the two come out wearing matching outfits to properly apologize to Yao. Honami asks if Kanji hasn't gotten ready yet, or if he really is going to dress like that. Then the man asks for a minute to change clothes and shave. They are going to meet Yao, and the old man seems scared. He questions what is happening, and Kanji says that many things have occurred recently. When they gather to talk, Yao is in a good mood and says that he didn't need anything fancy. Kanji says he knows that and even mentioned it to them, but it didn't work. The old man says he was surprised that Kanji knows someone from the Foreign Relations Ministry, and the young man explains that they studied at the same college. Yao says he took a look at the papers regarding the compensation, and from what he read, it sounds extremely useful. With that, somehow he will be able to manage. The truth is that since he returned from the hospital, he has been looking for a bank that could lend him some money, and it is pathetic to be in a bind just because of that. Hanami says that it isn't quite like that, and it's different from a farmer like Kanji. Yao's business as a vegetable broker has been suspended for 3 weeks, and considering the losses, it wouldn't be strange for him to go bankrupt. Kanji becomes worried, and Yao says it's not like he has to rely on him. The boy says that if some place offers a better deal, he will negotiate with them. As Kanji laughs at the situation, Chris observes and remembers when he said that Yao helped him a lot and that when he started farming, he wouldn't have been able to continue without the old man. The man says that Chris must be the knight of rumors and comments, that he has heard quite a bit about her, and that it must be tough coming from another world. Things like monsters and magic seem to come straight out of a manga. Yao stands up, saying that she is quite fun, and extends his hand to the girl. Chris asks if that is a handshake, and the man confirms, shaking her arm. Then the man says they should forget what happened and start anew. Yao offers them sushi, but Kanji says he doesn't need to go to so much trouble since the doors are almost closing. Chris suddenly stands up from the table. Then she says that she caused serious problems for Kanji's benefactor. That wasn't her intention, but it is a fact that she ended up hurting people while leading a peaceful life. It is not something she should be forgiven for. This also goes against her own principles, and she is aware that she is saying this for her own satisfaction, but still. Chris asks him to accept her apologies and bows. Yao places his hand on the girl's shoulder and tells her to lift her head because he accepts her apologies and says that her sincerity is perfectly clear. The old man says he also owes her an apology because when he collapsed in the hospital, he heard that everyone would have to stay for a longer period. Chris shouts that it wasn't his fault and that he did nothing wrong. Honami agrees, saying that from the beginning, it was supposed to be 3 weeks. Yao apologizes anyway and says that he even came to hate the girl a little, but a merchant should not think only about profit and loss. He has to show his sincerity. The bald man extends his hand to the girl, saying that this time they should have a genuine handshake and may shake hands. While they eat, the man tells Kanji that he found a good wife. The NC gets nervous and all flustered while everyone laughs. When they return home, Hanami takes her car, saying goodbye and mentioning that they will see each other again soon. Kanji observes that she always leaves as soon as she finishes sorting things out. That is kinda cold. Chris asks if Kanji really doesn't understand how Hanami acts. Every meeting happens by chance, and bonds are forged in those encounters, and then a bond known as a miracle was born. After the afternoon nap, Kanji gets up and notices that it is already dinner time, so he calls for Chris. The man doesn't find her and goes out to look for the girl. Suddenly, an old man appears, named Itu Tsugyo. The old man is 85 years old and even at that age still does the work of a farmer. He is also the closest neighbor, although he is still a good distance away, over 2 kilometers. Kanji questions what happened, and the old man says he should know that the blonde foreign girl is having fun with Senzu. Chris is playing with a dog, happy as can be. Kanji goes over to her and tells the girl not to leave without telling him, as it could cause problems. The girl says she just wanted to take a little walk. Itu Tsudio asks the boy when he got such a cute foreigner as a wife, and the man is outraged. An old lady appears and says that this happened because of the silly dog. She is Itu Tsugyo's wife and is named Itu Sumi at 72 years old. Itu Sumi says that Kanji got a great wife. The dog starts to get very agitated and Chris asks for help. The MC picks up Sangdu and tells him to leave the girl alone. That dog is from the 3rd generation of Shiba Inu that the family has been raising. Although he said 3rd generation, it seems they are not related by blood. Also, for some reason, that dog only listens to women. Ichusumi serves a bowl of kibble for Sengu, who runs off excitedly. The dog takes the bowl in his mouth and heads into the woods. Kanji asks what is happening, and the old lady says he has been doing that lately. Ichusumi thinks he has a favorite spot to eat, and Itu Tsudio believes the dog is storing food. Curious, Chris runs off to take a look. Kanji goes searching for the girl, and she calls out to him. When they reach the clearing, there are 3 little kittens eating from Sangu's bowl. Kanji feels proud of Sengu, who is taking care of those little kittens. Chris asks if those kittens don't have a mother, and the ANC explains that they were probably abandoned. The dog draws attention to a basket where a kitten has fallen. It is smaller than the others. Kanji notices that the kitten is not breathing and becomes furious that someone left those little creatures there. Suddenly, the kittens start rubbing against his legs. Kanji says they can bury the kitten in the basket later, but for now, they need to take care of the ones that are there. Suddenly, the little animal in the basket makes a noise and Chris runs toward it. Before it's too late, the girl uses her healing power. Magic is not as effective as in a game. The things you can do with healing magic are simple, like recovering a bit of fatigue or making wounds heal faster. That tiny kitten is now on a skill at a veterinarian's office, meowing. The man says it was a close call, but the little creature managed to survive. As for the others, there is nothing wrong. They are fine and healthy. The veterinarian says that 1 month after birth is a perfect time to transition from nursing to solid food, and perhaps due to changes in the environment, that smaller one's stomach couldn't handle it. He can drink milk from a bottle anyway. Chris comments that the science of that world is impressive and can save a small life like that. Kanji says that in fact, if it weren't for her, they wouldn't have been able to save that kitten, and the kitten starts rubbing against and licking her. Later, they return to Ichitsugyo's house, who says that this is wonderful and that they did a great job. Then, he hugs Sangdu, saying that the dog is amazing and that Ishigo and Megu must be proud in paradise. Ichusumi asks what they will do with those kittens, and the man says that is obvious. They will raise Yongo, Gogo, Hokugo, and Nanago. Chris is happy to notice that the name of that tiny kitten is Nanago. But Tsumiya asks if the man has forgotten his age. But Itutsudio says he plans to stay active until he is 100. Kanji tells the woman not to worry, as the veterinarian will look for adoptive parents for the little ones, but that may take a week or two. Itsumiya sees that Chris is very attached to Nanago and asks if Kanji doesn't want to take that one. The man wants to refuse, but seeing Chris with that kitten, he says he needs to think a little about it. Itsushimi asks if they are hungry and serves a table with delicious dishes. Chris says that this is extraordinary, and Kanji comments that it is just a meal from the countryside. The girl gets excited and starts serving herself and eating a lot, finding everything delicious. When the food on her plate runs out, she is eaten shocked. Itsumiya asks for her bowl to put more. The girl tells Kanji that the food from the countryside is really great, but the guy is also stuffing himself with food. The old man says that Kanji really likes his grandmother's cooking, and the man replies that Itsumiya makes very exquisite dishes. While they eat, Nanago approaches grumbling. Chris asks if he is hungry and puts a bowl of milk for the cat, but he refuses. Kanji says he has something that can help, and Chris offers a bottle to the cat. Everyone watches as Nanago finally starts to drink the milk. Kanji says goodbye to the elderly family and mentions that he will return the next day. Chris is excited about Nanago and believes he is already one of their cats. At that moment, another bond was formed by chance, and the Seiki Kanji household welcomed a new member. In the morning, Nanago wakes Chris up by meowing loudly in her ear. That morning, Kanji decides to go to the countryside alone for a bit. Before leaving, he asks Chris to help Itsumi take care of the other 3 cats. Chris arrives very excited at Itsumi's house, and the old woman says she came at a great time because the cats are wearing her out. After a while, the girl manages to get all the kitties to sleep. Itsumi grumbles, saying that it reminds her of the time she raised her children. Itsumi asks if Chris likes sweets and hands her some treats. The girl eats them with delight. Then she tells Itsumi that she can't stop eating. The old woman comments that it seems like it's the first time she is eating that, and Chris confirms that she has never had it before. Excited, the girl lets slip that she has never tasted such delicious sweets in the kingdom of Urid. The old woman asks what that is, and says she has never heard of the kingdom of Uridi. Chris remembers when Kanji said that magic or another world are not well regarded there, and that she should keep it a secret. So the girl desperately says that she is from Europe and is 20 years old. Itsudio returns from the countryside, and the cats wake up, ready for another round. Itsumiya says she will leave the kitties in Itsugyo's care this time. The old man sits defeated at the table while Itsumiya goes to make tea. He grumbles, saying that country women are very strong and scary, and Chris says that Itsumi is a great cook. Then she mentions that it was the first time she saw Kanji eating so happily. The old man seems surprised and asks if Kanji never told her that Itsumi's younger sister is his deceased mother. Their personalities were completely opposite, but their cooking was quite similar. Now everything makes sense, and Chris goes to Itsumi in the kitchen. She just realized that Itsusumi's food is like Kanji's own mother's cooking, so the girl asks the old lady if she can teach her to cook. The old woman smiles and says that from now on she will be very strict. Parents have a strong devotion to their children, a deep and honest feeling that asks for no rewards. Chris is now learning to cook with Itusumi. In that world, the bond between her father and child is one of affection. Itusumi wonders if, by working sincerely every day without rest, she can do what her younger sister could not. Later, Chris cooks for Kanji and asks what he thinks. The boy is impressed with the taste. After a while, the day finally arrives when the 3 kittens will be taken to their adoptive parents. The little ones remain tiny and restless. Atutsudio starts to make a fuss, saying that the cats won't be well cared for and will be separated. The veterinarian tries to reassure him, saying that everything has already been discussed and that the new owner is a trustworthy person. Itusumi says she is very sorry for her husband's stance and will make another cup of tea. Chris follows the woman into the kitchen. When she arrives, she finds the lady crying. The girl says she understands what the old woman is feeling and that it is indeed very sad for the cats to leave. But Itusumi says that for a moment she ended up remembering her younger sister. She says she really hates getting old and that she had nothing to do with what happened. So it is embarrassing, but now she is fine. Then Itusumi asks Chris to keep that a secret. The 3 little brothers leave in a transport box while the old man cries holding the dog. That night, Kanji comes out of the bath and tells Chris that she can go. Even so, he searches for the girl around the house and cannot find her. Meanwhile, the girl is by the edge of a lake, looking at the sky. The oldest memory she has is from when she was 5 years old. When she got hurt, her brother picked her up. She truly admired her brother and was always following him. He became a knight and then a hero. However, she was the only one who knew of her brother's silhouette, suffering from the loss of many of his comrades. The girl decided to become a knight, even knowing how her brother felt. Later, Bartholomeus accepted and told them to protect the country as knights together. She should never forget that her brother is there. Even if she falls into the depths of hell, he will save her. Chris wonders if her brother is okay. Meanwhile, Bartholomeus wonders where Christina is. In the territory of the Kingdom of Uridi, Louise explains that the forbidden magic of teleportation exists. It is said that the ancient gods used this magic to move around, and Louise wrote the spell on a scroll that she gave to Chris. The scroll is a special paper with power and a magic circle inscribed. Even someone who is a peasant and not a mage can use it if they put the necessary amount of magic into it. Bartholomeus asks what he should do then. Louise says that to find out his whereabouts, they would have to follow that same path. First, they must discover where the spell was used. When they stop at a location, Bartholomeus asks if Louise is sure it was there, and the girl says yes. They are in the Black Forest, also known as the Forest of Magical Beasts, but thanks to Bartholomeus, the beasts have been eliminated. Now the forest is called the Silent Forest. The truth is that many villagers around the forest reported witnessing a pillar of light reaching the sky. Louise believes that this phenomenon occurred when the teleportation magic was activated, and since that forest lies between the capital and the fortress, there is a high probability that they are in the right place. They searched for 2 weeks and in the end, found nothing. Louise stops in front of a ravine and observes that she feels large traces within a 20-meter radius. Bartholomeus says he has no choice but to put his faith in the girl. They have already checked practically everything several times, and Bartholomeus reflects on the pillar of light that pierced the sky. Louise says that piercing the sky is very unrealistic. At most, it touched the clouds. Then she realizes something. Louise says she may have made a mistake in her calculations, so she asks Bartholomeus to follow her to a place. The girl uses her magic and launches them through the air. She observes that her assumption was not wrong. Bartholomeus asks what is happening, and the girl says that her fixed idea was a mistake, a simple miscalculation in the initial numbers. Indeed, an error with the scale. As expected of a great magic used by the ancient gods, the mark on the ground is much larger than she thought. They need to measure the traces precisely and recover the magical power residues to the center. If they can connect the residual magic with their spirit of light, they will find Christina. Bartholomeus questions if that is possible, and the girl replies that the word impossible does not exist in her dictionary. Even so, developing the necessary magical tools will take quite some time. Earlier, when Louise told Bartholomeus about her sister, he was outraged that she had hidden that from him while the man was searching for her. Louise explained that forbidden magics are a serious crime, both for those who perform them and for those who use them. Since her spirit of light was shining brightly, she was sure that Chris was safe somewhere, not in danger. So she thought she would return on her own someday, but even after a month had passed, she was naive. Later, she told everything to Her Majesty. In fact, she was confined in prison until the day before as punishment. Bartholomeus asks why Louise would go so far for her sister. The truth is that Christina is the only friend she has. Bartholomeus smiles and ruffles the girl's hair, saying that he's also her friend. The girl throws a fit, saying that he is touching the hair of a lady. Chris would never imagine that her brother and her best friend would continue searching for her. Thus, time continued to flow. November arrived and the Cappy adopted was already huge. On the phone, Hanami explains to Kanji that in the Melvis household in the kingdom of Urid, the only man allowed to touch a woman's hair is her husband, considered an act of courtship. Kanji remembers when he dried the girl's hair. Hanami says that platonic love is not in fashion nowadays, and she knows that he cares about Chris. But no matter what he says, compared to emotional connection, physical connection is fundamental. So Honami remembers that she needs to write an appropriate report about them. She says she won't talk about the kitten that Chris saved with her healing magic, and she even told the girl not to use her magic, but understands that this time there was no choice. Chris walks through the hallways and enters the room where Kanji is talking about her checkup at the hospital. The girl calls the man, who becomes very startled when he sees her. He tries to reassure the girl, saying that this time she won't be in the hospital for long, and it will be a one-day trip. But that's not what Chris is talking about. She managed to destroy the household machines, the rice cooker, and the washing machine. Kanji desperately asks what happened. Then the girl says that the magical tools of that world are convenient and easy to use, but it's boring. So she tried to use magic to direct her wishes while pressing the buttons. Kanji emphasizes that magic is prohibited. Sometime later, he observes that at least he was able to buy the washing machine with a large tank. Chris continues to feel guilty and down. The man says that the washing machine and the rice cooker were old, and she shouldn't worry, but Chris comments that she knows that the magical tools are expensive. Nanago starts to mess with the crops and Chris catches him, then asks if those are beans. Next, she questions, shaking the pod like a rattle, if that means they are ready to harvest, and the man says it depends. Chris asks if in that world the beans can be preserved. In her homeland, they would let them dry in the sun, and when it was time to eat, they would soak them in water overnight. Then they would boil them. Kanji observes that it would probably work there. The man explains how he harvests the beans and notes that each farmer has their own way. Kanji observes that now is the perfect chance and they can harvest and let the beans dry in the sun. After a while, they spread all the beans out there to Sundabe. Kanji explains that they will let them dry during the day and bring them inside at night because there is dew in this season. The girl asks if the birds won't eat the beans, and the man says, that's a possibility. Then he looks for a mosquito net. They make a protective box so the beans won't be attacked. Chris asks if there is anything else she can help with. She feels she needs to do several things to make up for the problem she caused. Kanji says she doesn't need to worry and the girl doesn't understand why he never gets angry. Chris says that Kanji has changed since they returned from the hospital and she doesn't know how long she will be treated as a guest. The man starts to laugh and pets her head. Kanji says she is silly and that she can't hesitate forever. Instead of being angry about the appliances, he dislikes that attitude more. Chris feels completely embarrassed. Then the man notices that he touched her hair. Suddenly it starts to rain and they need to run to grab the beans and take the clothes off the line. The village of Mitsuyama is a remote place in the countryside. There is only a step away from becoming a marginal settlement. It's hard to cross paths with other cars or people there. Even so, lately it has been different. Students keep trying to get Chris's attention and treat the girl like a tourist attraction, even asking to take pictures. Lately, many people have been going there to see Chris. There is even someone hiding among the trees watching. The truth is that it's a waste for Chris to be living there, where Judas kicked the bucket. Maybe Honami was spreading the rumors, but she has already returned to the city. So, only the three biggest fans of Chris remain. Kanji takes a picture of the students with the girl. The day passes and they get into the truck to go to the field Rio Abaisho. Kanji's fields are scattered throughout the village. There was a time when the village thrived on agriculture, but now there are only 10 farms, including Itu Studios. To put it bluntly, agriculture is not profitable. When they discussed compensation, Honami even assumed he was making good money. If a radish farmer wants to make 5 million yen in a year, he will need 3 hectares or approximately 30,000 square meters. Kanji doesn't even have that much land. Now, with Yao's help, he is growing expensive types of vegetables. Chris is feeling down and Kanji asks what's wrong. She says she will make sure not to use magic in front of others. Chris is committed to trying to improve. There is no rest early in the morning, and she never complains about the farm work. When they stop in front of the garden, Chris asks what those things are, and Kanji explains that they are onions they usually use in the kitchen, but they are still very small. Chris says that is the devil's vegetable and that it's a bit much. In her country, there is something that resembles those onions a lot, which are carnivorous plants. Kanji is shocked that onions eat people, and the girl says they are not that big or dangerous. Even so, she can't say the same for small animals. Trying to calm things down, Kanji explains that that onion is not the usual one and is called calçote. It is a Spanish onion that grows like spring onions. They have a local calçote festival, which is very famous. In Japan, there is a similar festival in Fukaya, in Saitama Prefecture. Kanji notices he started to go off on a tangent and tries to return to the main idea. To begin with, she doesn't know what a normal onion is like, so he says that in Japan, there are various types. They have white onions, spring onions, and he teaches her everything he knows about onions. When they are heading home, Chris observes that she needs to study more about vegetables. They stop at another plantation and are in front of Jerusalem artichokes, which Kanji thought he had lost forever. Now they are really hanging there, and the boy teaches the girl how to harvest them. At night, he cooks for both of them. Kanji knows that a farmer can't take days off. The work is hard and you can barely survive, but he is grateful to have been born on a farm. Chris helps Itusumi at the market and she apologizes for bothering the girl all the time. Even so, she doesn't get any response from the girl. In the plantation, she seems to be exhausted. Kanji tells them to take a break, but the girl is distracted and looking at the sky. That was the moment she realized, and when she came back like that, she apologized to Kanji for the inconvenience. Later, she was reflective inside the truck. But she still wants to return to her world. She believed that feeling would weaken over the days. She thought she had decided to live in that world. At home, Nanago is flying above them. She doesn't dislike her current life. That world is more convenient compared to hers, peaceful, and her life is not in danger. Moreover, there are her feelings about Kanji, but those feelings and that emotion could be a lie. She is taking advantage of Kanji's love. That's how she truly feels. Chris gets restless and someone asks if she's having trouble sleeping. When the girl looks to the side, she sees Honami with her hair down. The woman tells her not to force herself and that the girl can take medicine if she wants. They went to that place after leaving the hospital. Chris says she doesn't need more medication and won't take long to return to Kanji's house, so at least she has to sleep normally. Honami hugs the girl to try to make her comfortable. Chris shouts that she is not a child and can sleep alone, but Honami doesn't mind and continues to show affection. She wondered at that moment if that is what it would be like to have an older sister. In the morning, Chris woke up at home next to Nanago. She should stop worrying and think about the present, about putting in effort today. She should continue living with Kanji. But one time, when she was looking up in a strange way, Kanji asked if the girl missed her old home. She is logically lying, so she asks if Kanji wants her to go back. The man says that's not what he meant. She didn't say anything to Kanji that day. The next day, she was drawn early by the noise from the kitchen. Her mother's coffee is as luxurious as always, but this time with many of her favorite dishes. Kanji was happy and told them to eat. Even Nanago received breakfast. Apparently, it's all right to continue having that life. The two students came back to see Chris. Kanji asks if they came to see the girl again, and the girl replies that those girls are cute. Then Chris asks if they are riding something called a bicycle and says she often sees those mechanical horses in the city. The man explains that they are mainly used on paved streets. With a trail bike, you don't have to worry about the terrain, and there are even bikes that you can disassemble. Chris observes that there are many types, and that is quite convenient. The man asks if she wants a bicycle. The next day, Tanji takes the girl to buy a bicycle. She falls completely in love with all those bicycles and then notices that all the bicycles from Japan must be there. It's the first time Kanji is going to that place, and Chris is very excited. So he says she can choose whichever one she wants. Even an expensive bike shouldn't cost more than 50,000 yen. Chris is very excited and says she chose the bike that's hanging on the wall. Kanji notices that she picked a mountain bike, so she made a good choice. But when he looks at the price, he sees it costs 369,000 yen. They go back home. And Chris is still excited. Kanji tries to explain that the bike was too expensive, but the girl remains sad. She ended up with a bike that costs 39,000 yen. Now, Kanji is going to teach the girl how to ride. On the first push she gives him, she falls flat. When they try a second time, she falls again like a ripe jackfruit. Tanji observes that maybe he shouldn't push her. 20 minutes later, somehow, she manages to ride the bike. Chris notes that instead of horses, bikes are more like sleds. Kanji says those are very different things, and then realizes that she is talking about skiing, because there was a discrepancy in the magical translation. Then he mentions that there is also the sport Dan Mu. It's when you go down a piece of mountain on a bike. Chris gets excited and says she will try throwing herself down the hill. The man shouts that she isn't even wearing protective gear. Chris loses control. Then she starts dodging all the obstacles and gets excited, shouting that this is fun. Suddenly, Chris crashes into a tree and the expensive bike flies away. Kanji panics, but the girl falls safely to the ground and apologizes for using magic. The man says it's okay because she is safe, and the girl replies that she can't say the same about her bike. They go back to the bike shop. In the end, they bought the bold disappearing bike for a cheap price. Chris is very excited because now they went to a home goods store. Earlier, she had asked Kanji to let her do a harvest of items. The girl does the harvest from the seed to understand the difficulties of his work. Any leftover soil would be useful. The man asks why she doesn't use the garden at home, and the girl says he already plants vegetables there, and she wants something just for herself. Then, the man has the idea to cultivate in a planter. In the store, Chris looks at everything in wonder. Kanji is also enjoying the things he discovered that are sold there. After all, when he goes to buy his materials, he orders directly from the supplier. Cultivating in a planter is like having a kitchen garden where you can grow vegetables in a limited space. This way, you can experience the joy of planting vegetables. Chris gets excited and buys everything she will need. At home, the girl is eager to start. She decides that the first thing she will plant is radishes. She loves their vivid color, but the best part is that they only take 20 days to grow. Chris says she also likes dishes with daikon. Kanji explains that that is a different kind of radish with a stronger taste. It's very good for salad and has a refreshing flavor. The man explains to her that they take longer than 20 days to grow and are usually planted in spring. It's too cold to grow in winter, and the strong taste makes it a bit difficult to eat in summer. Chris notes that it's November and they are entering winter, so she asks if that would work. Since it will grow in a planter, if she keeps it outside during the day and inside at night, it can grow well. After a while, Chris manages to prepare all her planters for cultivation. Kanji tells her not to overwater them, and as soon as they sprout, to try to pinch them a little. That the girl is very excited taking care of her little garden. She gets lost in thought, looking up, and then notices a presence. Chris makes it clear that she has already discovered someone is there, and tells the person to come out immediately. When she sees the shadow, she notices ears and a strange silhouette. The girl uses her firepower, wondering if that is a goblin or a demon. Then, a little child comes out from behind the wall, wearing a kitten hood. She apologizes, and Chris says it's okay, and that she just made a mistake. The girl asks if the child wants to take a picture, and she says no, so Chris questions what the little girl wants. She is interested in Nanago. Chris greets her and asks what the child's name is. The little girl says her name is Natsume. Curious, Natsume asks what Chris is doing. Very proudly, the girl says she is doing agriculture with those planters. As Natsume doesn't seem to know what it's about, Chris says she is making a vegetable called Hatsuka Daikon. The girl is impressed that it turns it into a Hatsuka Daikon. Then she says she hates that vegetable. Natsume explains that she likes daikon but doesn't like Hatsuka Daikon. Chris starts to panic and asks if it's not tasty. Then the child says it's very salty, bitter, and sour. The girl concludes that Kanji was a big liar. Natsume is a 10-year-old girl who has been living in that village with her grandparents for 3 months. They told her she could skip classes for now. Even though there is hardly any internet, television, or games, she feels enveloped by something warm and gentle. Natsume loves that village. She is at Kanji's house playing with Nanago when Chris brings tea. Then the girl asks if Natsume went there after hearing the rumors. The little girl says yes, and they say that Kanji has a beautiful blonde wife. Chris gets nervous and starts laughing, saying that she is not his wife yet and calling her beautiful is a bit much. After a while, the girl brings the dessert, called yukon, which is gelatinous and made from red bean paste, but forgot to cut it. Chris starts to eat the whole dessert. In seconds, she finishes devouring that delicious sweet, and Natsume laughs. Then the little girl tries that sweet and concludes that it is very tasty. The one who gave it to Chris was Honami, who bought it from an expensive brand. Natsume starts to describe exactly all the nonsense she thinks about that sweet, tiring Chris out. Later, She asks if the woman practices Kemgo. Chris asks if she is referring to using wooden swords and says that the name for that is fencing. The girl shows all her skills with that wooden sword, leaving Natsume impressed. But Chris says that she is still weak, and that's why she trains whenever she can. Only when she trains does she free her mind from bad thoughts. Natsume didn't understand a thing of what Chris said, but concluded that she wants to be like her in the future. Although her father and mother are far away, she is sure that this will make them happy. Kanji arrives and asks who the little girl is that ran away from there. Chris says that the next afternoon she will train with Natsume. The man questions who she is again. Then Chris replies that she is her apprentice, or maybe her little friend. Kanji watches Natsume and Chris fighting. The two are also together working in the garden. They have fun all day long. Kanji comments that the girl is really attached to Chris whenever she goes there and is a very sweet girl, but every time he tries to talk to her, she runs away. Then Chris says that among the Japanese, he is very imposing. That is, chiseled features, middle-aged man, and a face with no appeal for girls. Since it is already late, Chris gets up to go to bed. Kanji reminds her of something that will happen in 2 days, and the woman says she remembers and will tell Natsume. Later, Kanji goes worried to Chris's room to check if she is sleeping well. He remembers when she was in the hospital and sits outside to smoke. The girl screamed that she didn't want to stay there anymore and wanted to go back to her old house. Kanji is pensive, and Chris also can't sleep well. Later, Natsume says goodbye to Chris, saying that this is a promise. Kanji asks why the blonde has that face, and if she didn't tell the child that she would come back there tomorrow. Chris asks if children can curse someone. Apparently, she made a pinky promise, and if she doesn't fulfill it, she will have to swallow 1,000 needles. At night, Kanji tells Nanago that he will stay at Ichisumi's house the next day. Honami suddenly arrives. The man is not happy to see her and frowns the door in her face. Honami shouts for him to act like an adult, given his age. After a while, Kanji lets her in and complains, saying that the woman should have warned him that she was coming. Honami asks if Chris is in the kitchen and notices a nice smell. Kanji explains that they have some duck meat that a friend from the hunting club brought. He never expected to have to buy onions at the market since he is planting a special kind this year. Honami is impressed to find Chris cooking. The girl says that dinner is still a little while away, so she should make herself comfortable. Chris cooks very well, leaving everyone shocked. Kanji explains that it was his aunt who lives nearby who taught her. Now, Chris cooks by herself. This makes Honami a little envious. So she asks if the man still didn't touch her at all. Dinner is ready and smells very good. Honami tells them to wait a bit because she had something nice. The woman pulls out a huge bottle of sake, saying that it's necessary. Chris gets excited and Kanji says that the girl is still underage. Honami comments that officially she is 20 years old, and Chris says that in her world there are no age restrictions at all. After a while, all the food is gone, and so is the sake. Chris is very excited and agrees that the drink goes well with the hot pot. Kanji asks if the girl used to drink in the other world, and she says no. Taverns are fundamentally meeting places for men, and she's never been to one. She has had fruit wine at celebrations, but she is not very familiar with it. Moreover, it is the first time she drinks such a tasty alcoholic beverage. Honami asks the girl to take it easy because sake is a strong drink. Chris says they should start cleaning up, but Kanji and Honami say not yet because they are missing the last portion. The girl is confused because the food is basically gone. Then Kanji gets up and says he will be back in a few minutes. All he needs to do is turn the heater back on, add more rice, then some chopped onions and cabbage. Kanji asks Honami to take care of the egg, and the girl starts stirring the egg with chopsticks. She pours that mixture into the water and the dike closes the pot. Soon after, he turns off the heater, and now they should sit and wait a bit. When the time comes, he opens the pot and that rice looks delicious. Honami serves a bowl for Chris and tells her to eat before it gets cold. Basically, she delights in that rice porridge with egg. After stuffing herself, Chris is completely out of it, very drunk. The girl can barely walk and Kanji says she can take a bath the next day. The man apologizes to Honami, saying they wasted a good drink. But the woman is not bothered and says she brought that for Chris. Kanji asks what that should mean, and Honami is indignant, saying he is a thoughtless idiot who can't notice anything. While Chris sleeps like a baby, the duo washes the dishes. Kanji doesn't understand what is wrong, and Honami doesn't want to share. Chris asked Honami not to talk to Kanji about it. The man thanks the woman for coming over. Honami says she doesn't need his politeness, and they start arguing like two children. After shouting a bit, they break a plate, and Kanji gets worried about the woman. She starts laughing because it was just like the last time they made hot pot and washed the dishes right after. Kanji questions why they fought that time, and Honami says she doesn't remember either. This makes them reminisce about those old times. In the end, they are still the same as always. Kanji is smoking a cigarette outside, and Honami goes to tell him that she has taken a shower. When Honami steps out, Kanji tells her to come in, because otherwise she will freeze, since it is winter. But the woman doesn't mind and leans against his shoulder. The man feels embarrassed and steps away. Then Honami asks, when was the last time he had fun? As the man feels embarrassed, she gives a little laugh and asks if she can smoke his cigarette. Kanji says he thought she had quit, and the woman smiles at him again. Then she says she is thinking about getting married, leaving the man very confused. A long time ago, Honami was just a country girl who tried to bite off more than she could chew and enrolled in a university in Tokyo. She thought nothing would shake her, but it didn't quite turn out that way. That atmosphere, the distance, and everything else bothered her. That's when she met Kanji. They got along very well and fought sometimes. She doesn't remember what attracted her to him, but back then they slept together many times as if trying to confirm something with each other, but they broke up before graduation. Now Kanji tells her that the idea of marriage is very sudden. Honami says her aunt mentioned going to a formal marriage interview. Her suitor is a very nice man, but she wonders if she would have been a farmer now if she hadn't broken up with Kanji and May had gotten married. The woman notes that she is already 32 years old. The man says there are many single people at that age. Then the woman says that a man at 30 is very different from a woman at 30. It was impossible for them to have married, because even if Kanji had proposed, she would have refused. But that is very different from her current self. The woman begins to have a crisis because she is flirting with her old boyfriend and finds it horrible. Honami is in crisis because even though she has had a little to drink, she just wants to erase that from her memory. Kanji puts his hand on her shoulder trying to comfort the girl, but she punches him in the face, outraged, shouting that she will break him. The man does not understand what is happening, and she leaves to lie down. Honami stops by Chris's bed. She strokes the girl and apologizes to her. Nanago is there to keep Honami company during the night. In the morning, Honami wakes up with Chris by her side. She asks if the girl took a shower. The girl says yes and that it was very nice. Then Honami hugs her. Chris asks what happened, and Honami says that she doesn't need to pretend when they are alone, and that the girl doesn't need to worry because she didn't tell Kanji anything. Later, they go to Kanji's aunt's house to drop off the kitten and say goodbye. Itu Tsuyu tells them to enjoy their time in the city and eat delicious things. Chris asks if the old man wants a souvenir, but Itu Sumii cuts him off, saying he doesn't want anything. She tells Chris that as soon as she finishes her business, she should come back there. Honami is happy that those old folks are good people who took care of Chris without even knowing the circumstances. Nanado starts to panic as soon as he goes to Itu Suni's lap. Kanji doesn't react because he is a jerk without any initiative. Then Chris tells Nanago that she will go back because she refuses to swallow 1,000 needles, so she goes to get him, even if she arrives late at night. Honami was out of her mind the day before. While she and Chris lived together in the hotel, she always told the girl that she was not cursed. That night, Chris drank a lot. She seemed to be having fun. Then she finds herself in a scary place alone and wonders where she is. A strange voice asks if the girl can share the drink. It is her fallen war brothers asking for help. In the tower, the soldiers were waiting for reinforcements and counting on Chris. The girl wakes up startled from the nightmare. While taking a shower, she wonders how many times this has happened before. She is cursed. Then she woke up Honami as soon as dawn broke. Chris was determined, but still scared. It was then that Honami hugged her. Then she said that the girl didn't need to pretend when they were alone. The two embraced, and Chris was grateful that Honami listened to her. The magical curse does indeed exist, but it is not as exceptional as teleportation. One person curses another. Whether in this world or the next, the general idea remains the same. Chris is a deserter who abandoned her duty and fled to that world. If she is tormented by the grudges of her companions, she has no right to complain. She can only endure them, but she still cannot stay in that place. In that place where she hears the voices of her companions more frequently. Chris does not want to show Kanji her weaknesses. She does not want to disappoint him again. On the way to the city, Honami holds the girl's hand. The exams last 2 hours, and they leave the hospital. Honami said that she would not be hospitalized and that it was just a routine checkup. The next one will be in mid-January. Then the woman takes the girl by the arm and says that she needs to talk privately. She tells Chris that there is a way to break curses. They have a fairy tale called Sleeping Beauty and Snow White, and the 7 dwarfs Kanji wonders what they are doing because he wants to know the gossip. Chris is in total shock at what Honami says. Kanji asks what happened, and she leaves saying, "It is nothing." They say goodbye to Honami, and the woman bids farewell, calling him Prince. She tells Chris to make sure she does it the right way, and then Kanji understands about their little chat. It is only a few hours until they get home and can return to their normal lives again. Kanji talks to Chris and asks if she would go back to her old world if she could. Kanji knows that Chris has feelings for him, but to respond to those feelings, he needs to check something first. Chris is confused, and Kanji says it is just one of those what-if conversations. The girl says she doesn't know. Her current life is surprisingly pleasant. It is completely different from how she used to live. Her duties as a noble and a knight no longer have to carry those burdens, but it seems she is not who she really is. Since graduating from night school, she admired her brother, a hero, and spent her life on the battlefield. She remains silent, and Kanji asks if the girl is okay. Chris apologizes for forgetting what she was saying, and Kanji says he is the one who should apologize. Then the girl says that she may be in a different world, but she is still a knight and must act like one. She wants to live, protecting what is precious to her. But maybe she is wrong, and this is not the answer. She is just the remnant of a defeated army. Kanji says he knows how strong she is. Then he speaks words that his benefactor told him when he became a farmer. At that time, no matter what he tried to plant, nothing worked. When he was on the brink of collapse and ready to give up, someone ate his vegetables. A person can never win against the natural course of things, but even during those times, you have to keep your foot on the accelerator. No matter how hard you try, you need to keep fighting against that current. To start, you need to lift your head. Yao reached out to him, and his late father also said something similar. Chris says her brother also said something like that. Then the man parks the car and turns to her. He holds Chris's face and says he promised he would take responsibility. When they are almost about to kiss, the traffic light turns green and they need to move on. Both turn as red as tomatoes after the situation. Kanji says he believes in her strength, and it may take time, but she needs to believe in herself. He wishes she would show him a little more of her weaknesses. Even with all that, she is just a girl, and no one will blame her if she needs to cry. Chris is indignant, thinking that the man believes she is just a little girl and is belittling her. Then it was as if the dam had finally burst. Chris let out everything she had been holding back, and in the end, she punched him. Fortunately, it was only when they got home. The girl is all messy and crying, and Kanji asks them to calm down a bit. Then she realizes she overreacted. Kanji picks up one of her teeth in his hand, and the girl says that is not what she wanted. She starts to try to apologize and speak, but then she faints. The girl falls asleep. Kanji observes that apparently her battery has run out, and she is just a kid. He carries the girl inside the house and notices that she has lost quite a bit of weight. He remembers when Honami said he was an idiot without a sense of delicacy and incapable of noticing anything, but he knew everything. He knew how she blamed herself and that she had trouble sleeping at night or how she wandered around like a child so as not to worry him. He could have comforted her, but that wasn't right. They needed to talk honestly. In the morning, Chris wakes up and Kanji asks if she slept well or had nightmares again. The girl gets up and indignantly asks if he has no shame in touching a defenseless woman. Kanji is sure that he loves her. Kanji is on the phone with Honami and says that many things have happened, and Chris told him about the curse. Honami says she believes the curse is a problem with her mental state and that, hopefully, time will resolve it. The man agrees with that. Then the woman says that, on the other hand, they do not have a complete understanding of everything in the other world. Kanji says it is the same as theirs if they could use magic. The woman says that at the university, they conducted an experiment to see if the humans from that world could use magic, but no one succeeded. Before hanging up, Honami tells him not to forget that Chris needs a lot of attention, and the man says he doesn't need to be reminded of that. Then he says that Honami should invite him to the wedding if that happens. The woman says she refused the marriage proposal and hangs up before giving any explanation. She is determined to find her prince charming in her own way. Chris wakes up startled because she fell asleep again. She is still a knight and has to remember that, even though Kanji should have woken her up. Then the girl remembers that the night before, she punched the boy in the face. She reflects that she definitely overreacted and needs to apologize. When she leaves the room, Nanago flies at her. Chris stumbles and falls, and Kanji catches her before she takes a tumble. The man holds her in his arms in that embarrassing situation. Suddenly, Itusumi appears and says that the two of them seem quite cheerful that morning. Kanji and Chris try to justify themselves to the old lady, but they can't. Then the man asks what she is doing there. The old lady extends a lunchbox, saying she made too much. Then she comments that she is happy Chris is well, since she didn't see her the day before. They sit down for a late breakfast. As always, the table is plentiful, and Chris hurries to eat. They are stuffed turnips with tuna and mayonnaise. One must discard the end part, cut it in half vertically, and then slice it. Afterward, hold it firmly and rinse it with salt and water. Squeeze out the water using both hands. Put in the tuna, removing the oil first, and then the mayonnaise. Finally, one should sprinkle soy sauce. Chris becomes thoughtful because, despite everything, she cannot reproduce the same flavor. Kanji says it has to do with the difference in experience. He prepares to leave and says he will check the fields, and she should take care of the house, but the girl wants to go with him. Kanji tells her to relax and that Natsumi will show up in the afternoon. Chris goes to hang the clothes on the line when she hears the sound of a car. Someone is going to ring the doorbell, but the girl approaches and asks if that man in a suit needs anything. He says it is a pleasure to meet her. Chris is startled to realize they might be Kanji's guests and introduces herself as Christina Melvis. A woman approaches and says that her way of speaking still needs correction. Now there is a neatly dressed man and woman. Before Eyes asks if she is Kanji's wife, Chris says she is his employee. She suddenly feels uncomfortable and does not trust those two. Natsume appears behind the woman. The man questions if something is wrong and she apologizes for the situation. Then she explains that Kanji is working in the fields but should return soon. The man asks if she minds them waiting inside. He is Yoshi Koichi, 40 years old, and the general manager of the Tokyo branch of a construction company. His wife is Yoshi Tomoe, 38 years old. Chris does not understand what is happening. The three sit at the table, and the girl brings them tea, saying that Natsume scared her by bringing her parents there out of nowhere. Tomoe asks Chris to stop speaking so familiarly with her daughter. Then she questions where she learned Japanese, and the girl says she is still learning. She tries to distract them by talking about the weather, but Koichi tells her to be quiet because they will talk when Kanji arrives. An hour later, she hears the sound of the truck and runs toward the man. Kanji asks why she is running barefoot, and the girl says that she has already cut their heads off 1,000 times in her thoughts. Kanji questions what she is talking about and what is happening, and the girl shouts for him to come in quickly. He asks if someone has arrived, and Chris says that Yoshi, Koichi, and his crew are there, meaning Natsume's parents. Kanji rushes in because it has been years since he last saw Koichi. The Yoshi and Saiki Kanji families separated after an incident in the post-war period, but for Kanji, that did not matter because Koichi was like an older brother to him. Kanji rushes in and asks what is happening and says he never imagined he would be Natsume's father. Kanji comments that he heard rumors that he was climbing the corporate ladder at lightning speed, and Koichi cuts the small talk, saying he has no time. Kanji sits down. He apologizes, and Koichi says that compared to the boy, he is very busy. The man asks why Koichi came there, and he replies that he received a call from his father regarding his daughter. Natsumi has been going to their house lately. He thought she might be in debt to him in some way, but he realized that was not the case. Now he wants to know what kind of things Chris does with Natsume. Then Chris explains that they water the plants and practice sword swings in the garden. At that moment, Tomoe bangs on the table. She questions why they let a child do something like that. Chris says that Natsume said she wanted to get stronger. Kanji tries to intervene, but she shouts for him to shut up and stay out of it. Chris comments that, for Natsume's sake, she wanted to strengthen her mind. Then, Tomo shows Natsume's hands full of calluses. Chris tries to explain, saying she wouldn't let her do it to the point of causing blisters, but the woman shouts for her to be quiet and says her thoughts and words are foolish. Kanji observes that it was probably because they went to the hospital, and the little girl decided to practice alone. Chris acknowledges that it is her fault, and Tomo shouts that it is what she has been saying from the beginning. Natsume will have the entrance exam for school soon, and she is teaching something barbaric to the child. The woman is worried that the girl has hurt her face because there is an interview, and that is not a problem that can be solved with a simple apology, but a young, ignorant person like Chris wouldn't understand. She continues to be outraged, shouting and cursing at both of them. Kanji holds Chris's hand and takes a deep breath. Then he shouts to Tomo, challenging that old hag to repeat what she said. Everyone is shocked by the man's reaction. He tells her not to underestimate the farmers. Kanji shouts that he will not discuss how they raise their children. This is a problem for both of them, but they are crossing the line. They entered someone's house uninvited and scratched their table. In the end, they still consider themselves the ignorant ones. The NC says that before being there, he was a full-time employee at a large company and attended university in Tokyo. Pointing his finger at the woman, he shouts for her to be careful with how she speaks. Then he tells Koichi that he shouldn't mock farmers being the son of one. It was he who didn't want to inherit the farm and ran away. He never planted vegetables or had trouble sleeping, thinking the weather would ruin the harvest. The guy is already extremely upset and tells Koichi not to act superior when he knows nothing. Kanji throws it in his face that he was the one who said agriculture was going to change and that it was a grand dream. The atmosphere becomes tense among everyone at the table. Kanji knows he is saying horrible things to his friend, and he remembers how much that bothered the man when they were students. Even so, the current Koichi is very different from how he used to be. Kanji says he judged him wrong, and the man is just a fool with a huge ego who brings problems to the family. Koichi is left speechless, and his wife starts to get furious and blames him. Tomura says that everything the man does is push Natsume onto her, and that he even did that when the girl was bullied. Koichi tries to justify that it was she who said the mother is more suitable to be with the child. Tomo gets furious and asks if he is saying it's her fault. The two start shouting non-stop, blaming each other. Chris tells them to shut up while hugging Natsume. Then she says she won't stay quiet if they keep this up. The duty of parents doesn't end with earning money for food, providing clothes, and a house. They need to be close to their children, ease their worries, and take care of them as they grow. She says she may not know anything about this country, but her parents never fought in front of her. Chris begs them not to make her friend go through this. Kanji asks if Natsume loves her parents. The girl is silent for a moment, and then shouts that she does. Even so, she hates the fights. After that, Natsume's parents apologize to Kanji and Chris. Likewise, they also apologized for much of what they said. Then they spent the rest of the day in peace, as if that heavy atmosphere had never existed. Naturally, they continued the conversation about Natsume. After a while, her smile finally returned. Koichi calls for Kanji and says he is impressed that even he can get angry. Saying goodbye, he says he will make time to visit Kanji in the near future. The parents leave hand in hand with Natsume. Kanji observes that they say a child is the bond between husband and wife. Nanago asks for attention and affection, and also a bowl full of food. A story happened when Chris and Kanji went to the city for a routine checkup. Etude Tsudio wakes up startled with Nanago by his side. They had to take care of that little kitten all night. His wife hands him a bottle of water and tells him to take the pets for a walk. Etude Tsudio walks on the roof, complaining that the old lady really makes him work too much. He observes that, when younger, Ichusumi was very beautiful. She and Kanji's mother were the most beautiful sisters in the village. While the old man rests and hydrates, Natsume appears. She picks up Nanago and pets the dog, Sangu. Etude Tsudio approaches, saying that she must be the child staying at Biyoshi's house. But as soon as she sees the old man, Natsume runs away for her life. Sangu gets angry at the old man for scaring the child, and Nanago takes the opportunity to escape into the bushes. Sangu searches for the kitten and brings it back. Long ago, that village thrived on agriculture and had many people living there. Suddenly, a wild boar appears behind Etude Tsudio, leaving the man desperate. He runs alongside Nanago and Sangu and remembers that the people from the hunting club advised them to be careful. When he realizes it, the old man notices he is in front of a cemetery. He stops in front of his family's grave and apologizes to his ancestors for the wilted flowers. While he makes his prayers, Nanago draws attention to the Seki Kanji family grave. Since the flowers are alive, Kanji probably visits there frequently. Etude Tsudio observes that Kanji's father was a very serious and strange man. When they were young, they would fight after getting drunk. Even so, he was a great farmer, and Ichu Tsudio helped him with all his patience. The man gets lost in thought and makes his prayers. When he looks back, searching for Nanago and Sangu, he doesn't find them. But behind the old man is the wild boar. Ichu Tsudio returned home sulking, complaining while holding a bottle of sake. It's already mid-December, and someone said they would have a mild winter that year, but that wasn't the case. At that time, it's the season for Chris's first harvest along with her friend, Natsume. The two girls get emotional while harvesting the vegetable. They jump for joy, and Kanji observes that the plant is developing well. After they harvest everything, Natsume tells Kanji to eat one, but he says they should be the first. Chris agrees that he should eat first. Kanji asks if they have tried it, and the girls say that it's all a secret. Then he agrees to taste it and says he is a professional farmer, so he won't praise it without reason. The MC takes a bite of the vegetable and savors it. Then he excitedly shouts that it is delicious. Inside the house, Chris and Natsume eat everything they harvested. It's spicy on one side and has a perfect balance between bitterness and mayonnaise. Kanji is thrilled that the harvest was a success, and Chris says that plants are living beings and she cared for them with love every day. If parents love their children, they also respond accordingly. Natsume excitedly shouts that they also use the "make it delicious" spell every day. Kanji becomes concerned about the use of the word spell and asks to speak privately with Chris. He asks if she used magic, and the girl says no. They just did the same thing Chris did when she broke the appliances. Kanji says they have already eaten enough. Then he says he doesn't believe that appliances and plants are the same thing, but they should call Hunami just in case. Natsume asks what they are talking about, and Kanji steps out to go to the field. The man is there, working hard on his farm, when someone asks what he is doing. It's Chris, on her bicycle, who says that Natsume has already left, so she wanted to help the guy. Kanji explains that there is a chance they could be caught by a cold front, so he is covering the onions with those covers to protect them in case it snows. That thing is called a polytunnel, and compared to plastic houses, they are much cheaper. The man explains how it works, and Chris observes that when it comes to loving vegetables, she can't compare to him. Kanji says it's okay, and she can put her love into making amends with Natsume. The two had an argument earlier because the girl misunderstood something Chris said. Then Kanji feels a snowflake fall. A seriously harsh winter has arrived in the countryside. A few days later, Natsume appears holding hands with her father, Koichi. The man took a day off from work and decided to visit Kanji's house. The boy mocks his friend, saying that if he is so busy, he shouldn't have taken days off. The man says that after that day, he and his wife had a long conversation about Natsume. That made him realize that they thought they were doing everything for Natsume and the family, but it was just selfishness. For him, it's shameful to admit this at 40. Now, there isn't much time left until the year ends, and he wants to spend more time with Natsume. Kanji is happy to see his friend returning to how he used to be. Their families have had a bond for over 70 years. Land issues arose after both grandparents died, and making verbal agreements without signing contracts is a common problem in the countryside. Koichi says that his wife sent something for Chris. It's a kendo glove that allows her to practice her swings safely. Koichi says that this is his wife's way of showing good intentions. She wanted to go with him and apologize properly, but she had to work and couldn't postpone. Kanji observes that the woman's reaction was normal. After all, she is a mother trying to protect her daughter. He mocks his friend again, saying that he messed everything up with that couple's fight. Koichi asks what the relationship is between Kanji and Chris. The girl mentioned that she worked for him, but it's a man and a woman living together. Kanji's friend asks if he isn't making a mistake, and the young man says no. Then, Koichi observes that Chris seems to be a good girl. Kanji stumbles over his words and says that despite knowing Chris for a short time, they have already experienced many things together. His friend says that this means he is in love. Now it's time to hurry up and get things sorted. The afternoon passes, and Koichi tells Mitsune that it's time to go home. The girl feels sad, and Chris tries to tell her that it's normal to say goodbye. Kanji notices the situation and says that the girl can sleep there that night, since he is going to his parents' house the next day. Koichi is surprised by that invitation, but ends up accepting. Natsume gets excited and gives Kanji a kiss on the cheek. Her father becomes very jealous and says that this marks the beginning of the second battle between the two families. Chris is helping Natsume take a bath while Kanji heats the water. He reflects that he and Chris no longer have families and are alone, but they have ended up becoming a family. In the other world, Chris's brother continues to search for her. Louise has just given him very important information. Louise wonders where Chris is. Her spirit guide tells her that the girl is having a peaceful life. Since they went to school together, Chris has become an irreplaceable friend for her, but something happened that day that changed their relationship. Louise explains to Bartholomeus that Chris probably used the transportation spell in the Black Forest. The girl tells him to look inside the test tube and throws in a little thing that disappears. It's a magical reaction with a relative combination. In other words, it's proof of the connection of that magical sample with Chris's family and her relatives. Bartholomeus observes that she wants to use Chris's magic using his magic. Louise denies it and says she discarded the man since he is an exception. Bartholomeus looks down and agrees. His powers are not his anyway. Louise conducted an experiment mixing them, but she didn't get any results. There exists a certain historical magical ability, one that makes the amount of magic she possesses very little. It's like an ascending magical spirit. Louise reflects that even so, her techniques and knowledge in magic are superior. Bartholomeus feels guilty because finding Chris is even harder because of him. But Louise says that now they can enter the next stage of producing magical tools. Now she will take care of everything. Then the girl changes the subject and says it will be problematic for her if he doesn't take responsibility. Bartholomeus asks if the girl is talking about money, but she says that's not it. Then she talks about when he touched her head. Bartholomeus comments that he doesn't remember that. The little girl says she already told her parents that she would be the hero's wife, but deep down, that didn't mean anything to the man. Even so, for her, after 3 months of working together, it made her fall in love. Bartholomeus received marriage proposals from countless ladies. Even the third princess, Lady Amelia, adores him, and yet the man is obsessed with his sister and shows no interest in another woman. Bartholomeus says that if she waits until Chris returns, he will take responsibility. The girl gets excited and says she's talking about a wedding. He tells her not to worry because he will take responsibility and doesn't mind if it's with her. The little girl gets super excited and shouts various things, that there's no turning back and that she will grow up a lot to handle many children. Then she asks if Bartholomeus can brush her hairs, and embarrassed, the man agrees. That would probably shock Christina. But now Louise has become his sister. Chris looks at the sky and notices that the moon is more beautiful than usual. Chris finds herself in a dark place filled with chains. Kanji appears and turns on the light. The girl apologizes for being awake so late and says that until then, she was doing well. Then, Kanji hands her his blanket and asks if she wants some more milk. They drink, and afterward, Chris tries to sleep again. In the middle of the night, Chris wakes up feeling a presence she hasn't felt in a long time. It doesn't seem to be a type of spirit, it is probably Kanji's ancestor. In front of the young man's altar, she wonders why she was brought there instead of Kanji. Apparently, the spirit wants her to follow him. The girl walks through the bushes, following that thing, and feels a strange sensation. Upon seeing the tall grass moving, the girl concludes that there is something there. For Chris, it can only be an orc. The girl strengthens her body and prepares to fight. Then, before it's too late, she realizes they are just wild boars. But when they see the girl, they start heading in her direction. Chris concludes that she will end this with a single blow and asks how those creatures dare to ravage Kanji's field. As she tries to attack one of the boars, the other comes towards her and she no longer has time to dodge. The girl uses her body strengthening, ensuring that none of the animals can hurt her. After a while, the boars flee and the girl worries about the damage to the garden. Everything is destroyed because she arrived too late. It is already daytime, and a lot has happened since last night. The old lady and Natsume are excited about Chris's new outfit. Even Kanji loved the outfit. Everyone is calm now, but it wasn't like that a few hours ago. At 4 in the morning, Chris woke Kanji. The man is startled to see her covered in mud, and the girl starts crying like a child. She screams that she is no better than a pig, and even had her ancestor acting. Kanji thought the girl didn't want to calm down, so he forced her to take a bath. When she warmed up, he gave her sage. After everything, the girl finally went to sleep, and the operation was complete. Kanji then went alone to the field to check the damage and inform the hunting members. Upon hearing the whole story, Ichisumiya and Ichujivyo decided to eliminate all the wild boars from the face of the earth. In the morning, a noise startles Chris, and she wonders if the pigs have returned. The girl rushes out of the house and runs into Natsume. The little girl is in tears and asks if her friend is hurt. In the end, everything turned out fine. Kanji and Itsutsugo are smoking outside, and the young man apologizes for the confusion. The old man says he almost thought he would have a heart attack, but not long ago he was also attacked by a wild boar. So he thought that would happen, since they are having a mild winter. After all, that is part of nature, and it is the farmer's fate. Itsutsugo observes that Chris noticed the presence of the wild boars in the middle of the night, as if she had a sixth sense. Yao arrives in his truck, but desperate, asking if Kanji is okay. The man is very happy to see that Chris is unharmed. Kanji tells Yao that no specialized vegetable marks were damaged and says he knows that's why the man is there. Yao replies that he figured nothing bad would happen to Chris since she is a knight and can use magic. Natsume asks her grandmother who that gentleman is and she says he is Kanji's vegetable buyer. Yao opens a box, saying he brought a gift for them. Inside the box are several pieces of packaged wild boar meat. Chris is shocked to learn that wild boar is edible. The old folks are excited to eat the problem. Itsusumi is happy and says she will prepare turnips with that meat. The old lady asks Natsume to wash some vegetables and Chris to get the greens. The girls help her cook. After a while, they set the table. Everyone eats happily, and Chris concludes that wild boar meat is delicious. Sometime later, Kanji says he is going out to check the damage. Chris asks if he wants company, but the young man says he will handle it alone and won't take long. Besides, he needs to go to the veterinarian for Nanago's monthly checkup. To try to cheer the girl up, he says that the next day he will need all her strength. They need to put up new fences to prevent further damage. Chris gets excited about the idea, and Kanji leaves with his truck. About 4 years have passed since he became a farmer, and he hasn't had that kind of damage since the sweet potato field was destroyed 2 years ago. He thought he had covered all the bases with electric fencing. Kanji stops in front of the field and chuckles because he didn't imagine the wild boars would hit the onions so hard. When he went there in the early morning, he couldn't get a complete sense of the damage. Now, Kanji is frustrated because he thought the boars wouldn't eat the onions due to their strong smell. The man can't understand why the boars dug everything up there, since there were only onions. When the old man was still around, the onion fields were never hit like that. So, Kanji remembers that something happened around here before. Tsudio appears out of nowhere, asking if the boy is thinking about the landslide that happened 20 years ago. Kanji recalls that when he was very young, something happened that made his father start drinking again. Tsudio explains that Kanji's father drank a lot because he was going through a tough situation, as the finances were terrible. The old man says that remembering past experiences is just as important as the new ones he makes today. Nature changes every day, and they need to change along with it. Anyway, since it's getting dark now, they should cover the rest of the harvest with cloth. It is already night when they finish organizing things. The snow begins to fall, and Tsudio decides it's time to go home. But Kanji will stay a little longer. Something catches the boy's attention. He finds a broken wire from his fence and concludes that this is how the wild boars got in. He checks that fence every 2 days, but now he has gone 3 days without looking, so it's probably his fault. At the veterinarian's, the man asks if they are both okay, since he heard they are going through a tough time. Chris feels embarrassed because even the veterinarian knows what is happening. Thanks to the gossip, the veterinarian starts rambling and mentions that in the Japanese zodiac, there is the sign of the boar. The man excitedly explains that they started raising wild boars that evolved into the pigs they have today. Wild boars are very intelligent, but also temperamental, so one must be careful if they encounter one. Another cat arrives and catches Nanago's attention. The cat is Hakugo, Nanago's brother, and the two are excited to see each other. The veterinarian says that all the siblings are doing well, and it's a miracle that Nanago survived, considering how he arrived. At first, that little kitten scared him quite a bit, but now he is bigger than his siblings. The man was worried about possible after effects, but there is nothing wrong with Nanago. Making a little joke, the veterinarian asks if Chris used any magic on that little creature. The truth is that she did, and that's why the cat is alive. Chris is riding her bike home with Nanago. She wonders if her magical powers are really that powerful. Before the snow gets heavier, Chris manages to get home with Nanago. She is already worried about Kanji when he appears looking worn out. The man apologizes for being so late. Later, they are sitting at the table, and Chris asks if the electric fence had broken wires. Kanji confirms and starts blaming himself like a fool. He is feeling down and says he is going to bed to rest. The next day, at 9 in the morning, they wake up and take the truck to the field. Chris helps Kanji organize the fence. The girl notices that the guy looks exhausted and asks if he doesn't want to take a break, but Kanji refuses. The girl tries to argue, but Kanji says he also wants to take the opportunity to finish this, and now they will go back to the store to buy more materials. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and they are still working hard. When they arrive at 4 o'clock, they finally finish the work. The man starts coughing terribly, and Chris notices that he has a fever. The girl takes care of him and puts him in bed, complaining that he didn't tell her he was sick. Then she leaves the room, saying he should call her if he needs anything. Later, as she leaves the house, Chris asks Nanago to behave, while she goes to Itsusune's house. In the early morning, Kanji gets up looking for water, but Chris has already set everything up for him. She opens the door, asking if the man is awake. Then she serves him porridge because she thought he would be hungry. Kanji eats eagerly, and Chris is happy that he finished everything. Kanji thanks her for taking care of him and says the food was delicious. Chris asks if his mother cooked like that when he was sick, and he confirms. Even so, he thinks Chris's porridge is even better. While the girl picks up the tray, he remembers his mother. Embarrassed, Kanji turns his back, saying he's going to sleep. Chris wishes him good night and leaves the room. Later, she returns when Kanji is sleeping and uses her magic on him. The man is having the same dream as always. It has been 10 years since his father passed away suddenly. He was an old-fashioned, stubborn man who always had to have the final word. His mother always supported him humbly, without complaining. The weather is terrible, and Kanji says he will take over the farms. For now, he will go back to Tokyo because he has work to do on his thesis. Chris suddenly appears, and the man looks confused. Then he wakes up startled with Nanago licking his face. Kanji goes to say good morning to Chris, and the girl says he should be sleeping. The man is happy because his fever has disappeared. The girl leaves nervously, saying she will prepare coffee, and Kanji thanks her, saying he may recovered thanks to her. Chris feels tense, thinking that he might have woken up while she was using her magic, but Kanji was only referring to the porridge. The girl makes a complete breakfast for Kanji. She says she is happy that the color in his cheeks has returned to normal, and the man notices something about those radishes. Chris says the radishes are from Itusumi. Kanji comments that the ones she planted were tastier. Later, Chris asks where Kanji is going. He is going out to check the fields again because there are still onions that probably won't thrive. The onions are like the radishes. Some will sprout later or fall due to some kind of disaster, and he needs to check frequently. After hearing the boy's explanations, Chris observes that Kanji is a workaholic. She says that having a job to dedicate oneself to is wonderful, and with the head of the household busy, the whole family can rest. The man is shocked and asks if Chris means that she is part of his family. The silence is awkward. The girl pretends, and Kanji decides not to bring it up again, leaving the house. Kanji is in the field when Atutugyo appears and says he is the spitting image of his father, a very stubborn man. The old man says he understands why he is there, taking care of the soil after the harvest, and Kanji says he hopes to recover the field next year. Even so, Itutsuyo says that this is a bad idea. That area has always been very sloped, so irrigation is the easy part, but the soil is prone to landslides. Itutsuyo explains how the boy should take care of that soil. Kanji observes that he still has a lot to learn to be like Itutsuyo, and the old man says it's 80 years of experience. Itutsuyo says he has a piece of advice for Kanji and says he should marry Chris soon and have many children. The boy notes that since he got up, he has been very cheerful, but maybe he was becoming careless. Being the clueless idiot he is, he never managed to understand the emotions Chris felt that day. That year, they spent Christmas with the Ichis. There, they were welcomed with fine and delicious desserts. Itutsuyo and Itusumi give gifts to Chris and Natsume. The girl feels a bit bad because all she did was receive gifts. She can't believe how kind all the people she met in that world were. Even though she was nothing but a nuisance and caused them so many problems, her deceased former classmates continue to haunt her. Chris gets nervous, but Kanji rushes to hold her hand and says it's okay. Kanji has done many things for her, over and over again. But now, finally, the girl found something she could do to repay him. Kanji tells Chris to take a bath first. The girl argues that it only makes sense for the head of the household to bathe first. The man says he is getting old and must smell like an old goat, so he thought she might want to use fresh water for once. Chris says she doesn't mind Kanji's smell. The man becomes completely embarrassed and redder than a tomato. Then Kanji says he needs to sort some things out with Yao and will be home late. While he is out, Chris takes the opportunity to clean the whole house and pray at the household altar. She asks for Kanji's ancestors to take care of him. Inside the car, the man hears on the radio that a cold wave is approaching. Yao and Kanji are shocked in front of the plantation. It starts to snow, and finally, the man arrives home late at night. Chris tries to make conversation, but he is in a bad mood and says he needs a bath first. Kanji grabs his books and notebooks with his father's agricultural notes. The man explains that he went to check the onion field they replanted and it grew in an unbelievable way, which scared him. It's impossible for something like that to happen in that season and climate. Chris gets excited and says it's great news and that he will have a beautiful harvest, but Kanji doesn't think so. To him, it's devastating. The plants ended up growing deformed because this happened too quickly in a cold wave. Moreover, the taste is bland and it will be hard to sell them. The strangest thing is that this only happened to the ones they replanted. Kanji threatens to ask the girl a question, but decides against it. The girl goes to the kitchen and keeps repeating in her head that she is an idiot. Chris is just a young maiden knight, and Kanji has provided much more than she could ask for. It seems that all she did to repay his kindness was commit an incredibly foolish act. Sending him to the hospital was already bad enough, but the losses now are unimaginable, and Chris doesn't know what to do to minimize the problem. Walking through the house, the girl sees Kanji passed out and covers him to warm him up. She remembers when the man said that they would be a family. Then a dark voice asks if she really believes she will have a happy life. Chris continues to blame herself for letting her comrades in arms die. The girl makes a decision and thanks Kanji for everything. Then she reverses the translation magic and decides to leave. When night falls, Nanago wakes Kanji by meowing, and the man is startled because he heard his father's voice in a dream. Nanago bites his hand, and the man complains. Honami calls the young man and asks if Chris is with him. The woman says she received a voice message from the girl, but it's hard to understand what she was saying. It sounds like another language. Kanji is shocked and says he will call Honami another time. He goes to Chris's room to look for her. When he arrives, he finds only a note apologizing and saying that she is returning to her homeland. Look, Chris is in her armor in the middle of the snowstorm. At home, Kanji is going through a very difficult time. He had already suspected that the onions were Chris's doing, and now he realizes that she even cured him of the flu. Honami explains how Chris's search power works, and this justifies why the onions grew so much and so quickly. He just doesn't understand how she cured his flu, and the woman suggests it was the power of love. Noticing that the conversation is going nowhere, Kanji hangs up and wonders if Chris left in that snowstorm. Looking to the side, he notices his mother's and father's altar. Chris is struggling to stay upright in the snow. The girl remembers the army, her brother, and her best friend. Then, Chris begins to remember everything she experienced in that world and shudders. The girl screams and cuts through the wind. Suddenly, a pentagram appears beneath her feet. She uses Louise's power to open a worldwide transfer. Even using all her power, Chris cannot open the portal. The girl only accepts that this curse will never go away. Kanji calls for her, panting. The man notices that she is in the same place where she appeared when she arrived in that world and says they can talk after she is warmed up. Chris avoids the young man, telling him to leave her alone. He doesn't understand why the girl is speaking in her native language. Chris keeps trying to push Kanji away, but he continues insisting until he tells her he loves her. The man kisses the girl. She resumes using the translation magic and asks what he is doing. Kanji chuckles and says they should go home, but the girl says she is cursed. Kanji asks who would have cursed her, and the woman says it was her comrades who died in battle. The man observes that she is in a high position in her society, and probably all her comrades would be fine with sacrificing themselves. In this situation, everything indicates that the curse was placed by the girl herself. She blamed herself for a sin that didn't even exist, and Kanji is outraged that the girl tries to bear everything alone. He shouts that she should let him carry her burdens because he loves her. When Kanji sleeps and when he wakes up, he can only think of her. Kanji decides to speak in a way that is even clearer for the girl and asks her to marry him. He wants to spend the rest of his life by her side and share everything, all joy and all pain. At that moment, Chris's curse is broken. The couple kisses and returns home. In the kingdom of Eurity, the Magical Research Institute explodes. Bartholomeus asks if Louise is okay. The girl emerges from beneath the rubble. She is depressed, and Bartholomeus says it is always possible to start over. Louise says that Christina's safety is guaranteed, and they can assure this by Louise's spirit. She wanted her friend to come back, but she heard her voice. Christina was calling her at the top of her lungs. Probably, she ended up in a place that is not easy to return from. Even knowing it is impossible for her to hear Chris, the girl seemed very close. Bartholomeus is outraged because Christina did not call for her brother but for Louise. Louise explains that despite being a genius, she is still human, and that kind of magic is within the domain of the gods. To cast the summoning magic, the magical power of 10,000 wizards would be necessary. The kingdom of Yuri has at most 1,000 wizards. That's why she started trying to accumulate magic, but it all went wrong and became too much. On this occasion, the best option would be to go after her and bring the girl back themselves. Bartholomeus asks Louise if she remembers what day it is. In the streets, people are walking around with lit candles. It's the ceremony of souls, an event that occurs once a year where they celebrate the spirits of the dead. Bartholomeus apologizes to Louise for rushing her. He knows that his sister wouldn't die easily. Meanwhile, their companions are all dead. Bartholomeus is sure that all those spirits are watching over his sister. Kanji takes Chris to his family's grave, and the two pay their respects. Hanami is in the city, analyzing that a cursed knight in danger was rescued by a farmer who used the power of love. It's already New Year's Eve, and Hanami is excited to have her last date of the year and chances to love. Chris observes that the place they are in is quite crowded, and Kanji explains that it's because of the new year. They stop to look at the scenery, and Kanji comments that they have been through a lot this year. Chris says she never thought she would become his wife. After all, it would be very strange for a noble to marry a mere peasant. The man seems a bit insecure, but Chris quickly clings to him to show her affection. When they are in the car returning home, Kanji asks if Chris is going to Itusumi's house for the night to prepare the New Year's dishes. The girl confirms and asks if Kanji wants to go along. The man says no because he doesn't like very crowded places at the end of the year. Chris suggests not going either, but he says she was invited. Besides, they went together the day before. The two knocked on the old couple's house with a gift. With a trembling voice, Kanji says they are there to announce the wedding. Chris remembers the occasion and asks why he was so nervous, and Kanji replies that this is the kind of situation that makes any man nervous. Late at night, Chris returns home and is greeted by Nanago. Kanji was sleeping and woke up when she arrived. The man adjusts himself and says it's time to make the tachikoshi soba, a typical New Year's dish, but Chris says it's already ready. Itusumi had already imagined that Kanji would be all sluggish at home, so they did everything there. Ichitsubio is eagerly waiting while drinking sake. The man says it's fine, since he has nothing else to do there. The girl says she loves that village because everything is very beautiful, and the countryside is inhabited by many spirits. Kanji doesn't understand a word of what she's saying, but seeing that the girl is enjoying it makes him happy. Later, he drinks at Ichisumi's house while eating a munch. It's New Year's Day, and May went through a lot in the previous year, but Chris is grateful they made it there safely. Kanji and Chris bow before the altar. The girl says she wonders what the boy's ancestors think of her. The man asks her to pay attention to what he is going to do and bows, wishing her a happy new year full of flair. That's how a typical Japanese New Year's greeting is done. Chris has difficulty understanding, even with his translation. Moreover, she also found it strange when they heard music in Japanese that seemed to be everywhere. Kanji observes that the music they heard was a mix of pop and rock, so the girl still has a lot to learn. Nanago appears after her nap, and Kanji wishes her a happy new year. Then, the man serves a liquid in a bowl. It's tozo, a spiced medicinal, sake. He asks Chris to drink because it's a tradition for the younger person to drink first. After tasting it, she says the flavor is curious. The man agrees, saying he doesn't understand much of it either, but it seems that January doesn't arrive if he doesn't drink it. They open the traditional New Year's food and are impressed. Kanji says everything turned out magnificent, and Chris comments that now that she looks closer, she agrees. The man is impressed that the girl made it that way on her first attempt. Kanji observes that now God can have his 3 days off while eating those delicacies. That typical food did not spread among the common people for a while. The custom involved eating pre-prepared foods to allow God to rest during the first 3 days of the year. The Japanese also love their little superstitious puns rhymed with the name of that dish. The man gives some examples, and Chris is impressed with Japanese culture. For Chris, that is the greatest joy she has ever experienced in her life. The couple wishes time would stop so they could stay in those moments forever. At Natsume's house, she finds her father to say that dinner is ready and asks if they are going to Mitsuyama the next day. Meanwhile, Hanami is finishing her evening date. The man holds her and says he needs to tell her something. Without Kanji and Chris knowing, things continued happening everywhere. The next year was already preparing to be another interesting one, and thus the curtains rise to a new year. After they spent New Year's at home, they received a call from Itusumi early in the morning. It was a bit sudden, but everyone decided to meet at the city shrine for the first shrine visit of the year. Everyone is gathered, and Chris even wore traditional attire. The girl wishes Natsume a happy new year. The people around start to stir, because it is not common to see a foreigner wearing traditional clothes. The man thanks Itusumi for adjusting the kimono for Chris. The elderly woman says that kimono always belonged to the young man's mother. That outfit is beautiful and probably quite expensive. Natsumi asks Chris if something happened with her and Kanji. Her father says that the two are engaged, but that is not what the girl is talking about. The child is sure that naughty things happened. The girl's mother asks her to stop and apologizes for making her feel embarrassed. The relationship between Chris and Tomo is now normal. The group enters the temple together. Kanji talks to Koichi, saying he heard him talking on the phone with farmers. The young man wonders if his friend is deciding to quit his job to take care of the fields. The man says they can talk about it when they sit down somewhere. Tomoe is very happy that Natsume is smiling all the time because she is with Chris. Ichisumiya pushes the woman so that she gets closer to the two. Then, Natsume holds hands with Chris and her mother. After walking around the shrine, they finish their visit. Chris and Natsume go to draw their fortunes. The girls pick cool things and get excited while Kanji receives the blessing. Suddenly, Itu Tsugyo becomes indignant because he drew the great misfortune. Considering that the old man drinks, has high blood pressure, smokes, and loves spicy food, it is not surprising. Joking with her husband, Itu Sumi says he will die at 86 years old. The old man is outraged. Sometime later, Kanji finally goes through a strange situation where he needs to be honest with his friend. The man showed him a drawing that his daughter made. Koichi called him to meet at a diner one day after the drawing visit. Kanji says that Natsume will probably become a painting when she grows up, but that is not what the man wants to hear. Koichi asks him to describe what he sees in the drawing, and Kanji says he sees Natsume happy, her grandparents happy, and her parents strict as always. That is how Natsume is feeling now. Suddenly, Tomoe approaches and sits with them. The woman explains that drawings are a common way for children to express themselves when asking for help. While the girls' grandparents are in aprons and happy, they are in suits and expressionless. Koichi is used to reading reports measuring the stress levels of his colleagues, so he knows the warning signs. Now, the two are quite depressed because they saw that drawing. The couple thinks that Natsume hates them. For that reason, Koichi wanted to ask something of Kanji. The man places paperwork from the Mitsuyama Agricultural Corporation on the table. Koichi asks if his friend would be willing to start an agricultural corporation with him. Japan is facing a serious problem with rural depopulation, which decreases the country's food self-sufficiency. Taking all this into account, the National Diet approved an amendment to the Agricultural Land Law, where the term of the Agricultural Production Corporation was revised. Kanji observes that it was very well written and is not a job that could be done in just a few days. Kanji apologizes for the harsh things he said to his friend, and Koichi says he had no idea back then, so it's all right. After that day, the man was able to evolve and also received a lot of advice from the elderly. Kanji asks if Tomoe will be okay with that agricultural life. The woman says that their marriage no longer has love. They both drown in work and sleep in separate beds without even talking. She thinks they wouldn't last after Natsume grew up, but now things are different with everything that has happened. Kanji comments that the idea of founding an agricultural corporation crossed his mind the previous year when he worked with Itu Tsudio. Koichi observes that agricultural life can be tough, and he has heard several stories from his father. Even Itu Tsudio agreed to participate. Everything developed very quickly, and Kanji didn't even have time to think. Agriculture is the essence based on a small private business, but there are a number of significant benefits in an agricultural corporation. One of them is the possibility of receiving a regular monthly salary. Honami talks to Kanji on the phone, saying he is funny because he left a corporation to become a farmer and is now going back to another corporation. At home, Chris is very excited about that news. Kanji never knows what to really expect in life's turning points, and that's how three familiar neighbors begin to cultivate as one. Itu Tsubio is wearing a suit and says he never thought he would become a white-collar worker at 85 years old. He hasn't done anything but agriculture since he was born, but life is full of surprises. Kanji tries to explain to the old man that the work they do won't change at all, and there's no need to wear a suit. Itu Sumi says she has already tried to explain that to the old man, but he doesn't want to hear it. The young man observes that he is still young in this journey and is very happy to have Itu Tsudio by his side. The old man says he is very glad to be part of this because his own children moved to the city and told him to leave the countryside and go to a nursing home. Itu Tsudio is outraged and says he won't let his children have a say in that and will trust the rest of his time as a farmer. On the way home, Kanji reflects that Itu Tsudio's children must be around 50 years old, and it's important for him to have a conversation with them to avoid misunderstandings. Kanji meets Yao to talk about the idea of the agricultural company. The paperwork states that they will even take advantage of the 5 hectares of abandoned rice fields. Cultivating rice on those 5 hectares could mean a profit of over 5 million yen per harvest. Even so, after accounting for expenses, 5 million yen isn't that much. Yao says there is no guarantee that they will be able to maintain those numbers and comments that he has seen many young people start agricultural businesses, but only a few of them have succeeded. No matter how many experienced individuals will have to be coordinated, it will end up causing problems. After all, each farmer has their own unique way of doing things. If they clash, it could become a mess. An awkward silence fills the room, and Gao says he will support Kanji since he is his valuable client. The man asks if Kanji will be the representative of the company, and the young man says he thought about leaving Koichi in that position since he made the largest investment. Yao says that man has no knowledge of agriculture, and the other two are too old, so he truly believes Kanji should be the representative, and probably even Koichi agrees with that. Yao changes the subject and asks when his wedding with Chris will be. The young man doesn't have an answer, and the man says it's not easy to find a girl like that, so he needs to formalize everything as soon as possible. Kanji hoped to include Yao in the group as well, but apparently the man declined. In the car, Kanji finds the lucky slip he picked up the other day. Chris is out walking with Nanago and Senzu when the dog runs after a kite. He meets a boy who gets excited upon seeing the dog and talks about how his grandparents are acting. Chris asks who he is, and the boy gets nervous upon seeing her. He then introduces himself as Itu Heita, 18 years old, and asks the girl to go out with him. Itu Heita is 18 years old and is an energetic high school boy who is currently looking for the girl of his dreams. He will graduate soon, but he still hasn't figured out what he wants to do with his life. He managed to get into a prestigious high school by luck, but ended up failing because he couldn't get good grades. Now he has come to visit his grandfather in the countryside when he suddenly encountered a very beautiful blonde girl who seemed to be from another world and asked her out. Before he knew it, he was in a sumo wrestling match with Chris. A translation error made Chris understand "go out with me" as "fight with me." The boy believes that if he defeats her, he will be able to date the girl. Chris takes advantage of the fact that he is a fool and inexperienced and throws him to the ground when he is distracted. While the boy is defeated on the ground, Ichi Tsubio approaches and asks what the kids are up to. Chris is shocked to realize that Ichu Heita is the grandson of Ichu Tsudio, and the boy asks who she is. Chris says she is Kanji's wife. Ichu Heita starts shouting that this must be a joke because she is about to marry that old man when he gets hit on the head. Kanji is behind him, full of anger. After the boy leaves, Chris observes that Itu Heita is interesting, and Kanji says he used to be a charming boy. Itu Sumie approaches Kanji and says that Itu Heita looks like Itu Tsudio when he was younger. The MC asks if the young man is going to college or has any plans, and the boy says no. Itu Tsudio appears, telling them to talk later because it is already late. At the old folks' house, Itu Sumi says she knows the boy only came because his father asked him to check on how the old folks are doing. Itu Heita explains that he ran away from home, but had to come back because he has no money and is an idiot. Itu Tsudio sits down, saying that they will always be on the boy's side, and he has a long life ahead of him. Itu Heita is not willing to let what happened that afternoon continue to dishonor his grandfather. He wants to apologize to Kanji's wife. Soon after, he wonders what the girl is doing in that godforsaken place. When he arrives at the house, Chris is enjoying the hot water bath. Kanji asks her to pass him the soap, and Itu Heita screams, questioning if the two are together in the bathroom. Kanji went there with just a towel around his waist to teach the boy a lesson. At the Itu family house, Itu Heita tells Kanji that he exaggerated, and the man says he doesn't care, but will give him the New Year's money. Meanwhile, Sangu is refusing to eat the usual food because he wants the bourgeois food for New Year's every day. Chris tells Sangu that it is disrespectful to be ungrateful even when receiving 3 meals a day. The dog agrees and goes to eat. Itu Heita observes that Sangu does not take his flight seriously. Kanji reflects that there is a good reason for Itu Tsubio to be irritated that day. The old man's children arrive to visit him. Itu Tsubio complains, saying he doesn't know why the two came there. Kanji says he wishes Koichi were there so they could all talk together. Itu Kazuhiko says they were very surprised by the proposal to establish an agricultural corporation. As the adults enter, Itu Sumiya asks Chris and Natsumi to play outside. Itu Kazuhiko finds it interesting that they do not need to transfer the ownership of the land, just lend it. Kanji asks if they have considered moving back to the village. Itu Heita tries to say that he loves that city, but his father tells him to be quiet. Itu Kenji says they know how hard it must be for Kanji to bear the responsibility of taking care of those 2 old folks alone. He already has his own families and jobs, so it is not simple to think of anything else. Moreover, their parents are old, and both get anxious, thinking that they are trying to start something at that age. What he would like most is for both to move in with one of them and relax. Tetsutsugyo gets agitated and says he will not go to any nursing home. The old man asks if the man is not satisfied inheriting all his land, and Itu Kazuhiko says no, since he will have to pay many fees when selling it. Itu Tsugyo is outraged when he realizes that his son wants to sell the lands that their ancestors have maintained for generations. Itu Tenji, Itu Heita, and Kanji become worried about the direction this is taking. Suddenly, Itsugyo collapses onto the table. The old man is apparently having a stroke, and they need an ambulance. Kanji remembers Chris's magic and runs out looking for the girl. Meanwhile, the girl is with Natsume practicing sword fighting. Suddenly, they see an ambulance passing by. Songu is following the car at high speed. Kanji is also in his car chasing after the ambulance. Ichuheika is crying when he shouts that it was his grandfather who fell ill. Inside the ambulance, they try to keep Itsudio alive. The next day, everyone is at the hospital and Ituheita is crying with emotion because his grandfather is alive. Itsudio regained consciousness 2 hours after being admitted to the hospital. Fortunately, he only had a minor stroke and will not suffer any consequences. The old man apologizes for making everyone worry. The man explains that he took a quick look at the Senzu River, which separates the world of the living from the world of the dead. He also felt as if his consciousness was about to empty for a long time, but then his old dogs appeared to scare him away. When he realized it, the old man was already waking up in the hospital. Kanji says that what matters is that he is fine now, and Chris confirms, saying that even Natsume was crying a lot. Kanji leaves grumbling, saying that Ichuheita is a big baby, and Chris asks if the Senzu River really exists. The MC says that this is one of the many religious beliefs of that world. They say it is a river that separates their world from the world of the dead. Chris says that this reminds her of the Library of Villadoma from her world. The legend says that the goddess of wisdom keeps records of the souls of people who have lived and that they are retained in her library. Even so, it is just a legend from hundreds of years ago. They have still not been able to prove any trace of a human soul existing in the realms of the divine. Outside the hospital, Itu Kazuhiko and Itu Kenji are downcast. Kanji asks what the two of them are doing out there and says that visiting hours are almost over. Itu Kazuhiko feels guilty about what happened to Tsuvio and thinks that his father only fell ill because of him. He now believes that the man probably doesn't even want to see him. Itu Sunia tells the two to stop being ridiculous and questions what kind of father wouldn't want to see his own children. She tells them to go in and see him immediately. After they leave, Itu Sunia apologizes to Kanji and Chris for the trouble. The old woman thinks that this is a punishment for her, having said that Tsudio would die at 86 years old. Itsusuni brings up the agricultural corporation, and Kanji says he will talk to Koichi about it. Later, at home, Kanji and Chris are relieved, because it will only take a month for Tsudio to recover. Yao suddenly calls Kanji to talk about the onions that Chris grew with her magic. After he hangs up, the girl asks if they want to talk about the onions she ruined. Kanji says that it's more or less that, and Yao says she will try to find a place that buys those onions. Even so, he doesn't want the girl to feel depressed. Chris asks Kanji to buy her a cell phone because, despite having promised not to use her magic, she wants to do everything she can when possible. Kanji starts to say something, but Ituheita appears at the door crying and saying that he loves his grandfather. The night before the collapse, he seemed happy talking to the boy, and the boy wants to take his place from now on, so he asks to be allowed to join his new company. Heita begs Kanji, and the man refuses. The boy shouts, saying that he will soon graduate from high school, and if necessary, he can even drop out to take the position. Kanji says that this is not the only problem. The man asks if Heita really loves his grandparents that much, and the kid gets angry. The MC says that Heita doesn't visit his grandparents except on New Year's. The boy gets nervous, and Kanji says that he thinks Heita is being carried away by fleeting emotions. Then, the MC asks if Heita has convinced his grandfather to do that, and the kid says it's just a matter of time. Kanji slams the door in his face, telling him to try again later. The next day, Kanji and Heita are working in the field. The young man suggests they go have lunch. Suddenly, Heita appears accompanied by his father. After chatting a bit with Kanji, the man asks if he is not willing to consider putting his son in charge of the business. Heita's father says it would be very good for him and his brother to know that someone is there with their parents. Even so, Kanji is unsure. He questions whether Heita understands that this is heavy manual labor with no vacations or holidays. The boy says that he has no reason to avoid the work his grandfather did. Then, Kanji agrees to give the boy a skills test. The MC says he wants Heita to pass the final exams with a score that would place him in the top 50% of his generation. The kid panics because there is no way he can achieve that. His school demands a lot and is extremely competitive. It is an assembly of all the brightest minds, and trying to stay in the top 50% would be ridiculous and even impossible. Kanji tries to suggest 67%, and Heita says that even men, it wouldn't be possible. Chris asks Kanji if it wouldn't make more sense to take the boy on as an apprentice and evaluate his work. But the MC is not interested in giving such a commitment to the young man. Haida gets upset and shouts that Kanji doesn't want to let him work because he is around the same age as Chris and the man is dying of jealousy. After that outburst, the boy leaves. That night, Kanji is sitting sadly at the table, and Chris serves him a cup of tea. The man tries to explain that he is afraid to have Haida around because he is still very young and inexperienced. Moreover, if he really wants to become a farmer, he can learn much more from Sugio than from him. Suddenly, Sumi knocks on Kanji's door. The man asks if she is there because of the boy, and the old lady says she just came to thank him. Sumi is grateful that Kanji was so tough on Haida. She and Sugio can't help but spoil the boy. Furthermore, Haida wants her to say something to Kanji. The boy concluded that he will get one of the best spots in his class in the final exams, so that Kanji has no choice but to accept him. Chris observes that the boy is really interesting. In mid-January, Kanji takes Yao to see the onions that Chris ruined with his magic. The MC says they probably won't be good for anything. The man observes that they look like large shallots and asks about the taste. After tasting them, they conclude that it's not so bad. They are slightly sweet with a pleasant and spicy flavor. A great Japanese source. Those onions are perfect for the Japanese sauce used universally in cooking. Yao notes that those onions are like the spicy icom radish and concludes by saying that he will consider those onions deliverable. The man observes that Kanji is even giving those onions away for free, considering the price he is charging for them. Then, Yao comments that he is eager to try experiments with magic and other vegetables. Kanji observes that magic doesn't seem to be useful for growing vegetables and shows the man a handful of soil. Although Chris's healing magic speeds up the growth rate, the process also drains much more nutrients from the soil than necessary. If the soil is so drained, it won't be usable in the next planting season, and the cost of producing magical vegetables is too high for the results. Kanji is in his truck and decides to pay a visit to Tsugio. The issue with the old man has been somewhat resolved, but Heida's tests are still pending. Kanji also meets Koichi's father, whom he has only seen in passing. As he walks through the halls, Kanji suddenly runs into Natsume. When the MC enters Tsugio's room, he finds him with the other gentleman. That is Yoshi Kusuke, Koichi's farmer father. Kanji gets very nervous and greets Mr. Kusuke. The old man is calm, and Tsugio explains that they are discussing the agricultural corporation. The MC worries that Tsugio is planning to return to work as soon as he is discharged, but the old man says he would love that. But with what happened this time, apparently, that's not the case. Haida told Tsugio that he would come back to help, depending on how he does in the final exams. Kusufi observes that it is very good that the man's grandson is interested in agriculture, and Natsumi asks if he would be happy if she also entered the field. Laughing, Kusuki says that what would make him happy is to see her grow up to do whatever she wants. Kanji is glad that the old man is such a kind person, while Kusuke comments on the MC's relationship with Natsume. The man says it is all thanks to his wife, and the old man says he will visit her someday. Koichi enters the room, happy because it seems that the main members of the company are gathered. He wants to take the opportunity to get approval on something that has been on his mind about who should be the representative of the company. Koichi says he believes Seiki Kanji would be the best person for that. The two old men agree, leaving the MC very nervous. With that, he was elected president of the company, and Chris even made a cake to celebrate. At home, Chris is watching TV and is emotional. Kanji arrives and goes to meet her while the girl is blushing in front of the screen. The MC bought the device to help the girl speak Japanese, but it seems she has become addicted to it for other reasons. Apparently, she is in love with a soap opera from 20 years ago that was a huge hit. On the table, there are several study notebooks of the girl. Chris is having difficulty learning some characters, and Kanji suggests that Natsumi help her after sword training. Chris wants to receive the necessary education so as not to embarrass Kanji in any situation. Despite everything, the girl is more entertained with her little novel. Outside, Chris finds Kanji washing a daikon at the faucet. He was helping Sumi in the field, so she gave him some, and Chris notices that they are gigantic. In the kitchen, Kanji is preparing daikon with pork ribs. First, you should cut thick slices and then peel the sides. After that, cut across in the middle of the slices and finally boil them in the same water used to rinse the rice. Chris asks why it has to be in that water, and Kanji reveals that he doesn't know, but that's how his mother did it. When the daikon is cooked, just take it out, add the kombu to the bottom of the pot, and then place the daikon and the pork ribs inside. After adding seasonings and letting it boil, just mix in a bit of miso, and it will be ready. Chris observes that the food looks very delicious. They eat while it's still hot. As always, the girl is impressed with the taste of the food and devours everything. Kanji asks if Chris could help him with the harvest the next day, because there is a carrot field at Sugio's house that needs to be harvested. After dinner, Kanji goes to heat the bath for Chris, but the girl is already sprawled out on the living room floor with Nanago. Oryu is an old-fashioned man with a strong sense of duty. He is one of the few farmers currently living in Mitsuyama and is only a few years younger than Kanji. In high school, he reached the national kendo competitions and was very studious. Then, he managed to get into graduate school and a job as a researcher. One day, while Kanji was at his corporate job, Oryu came to visit him. On that occasion, they talked about Kanji's plan to inherit his family's agricultural business. About a year later, Oryu also returned to take over his own family's business. In the morning, Kanji meets the young man, who is 30 years old and a full-time tomato farmer. Kanji notices that his friend looks very handsome and is spending that beauty working in the field. Oryu ignores it and asks how Tsugio is doing. The young man is there to help with the harvest of the Itu family's carrot field. Oryu says it won't be long until his parents arrive with the harvester to help. Kanji says it's not necessary to go that far, but the young man wants to return the favor to the Itu family. Old Tsugio is like a textbook and taught him many things about farming. Kanji notes that he also learned a lot from that old man. Then, the MC asks if Oryu is still determined to only grow tomatoes, and the young man says yes. Additionally, he hands some to Kanji. The MC takes that tomato and observes that it is delicious. The young man is marketing those tomatoes as the ideal gift for any occasion. Since it is a small operation, he had to figure out how to stand out. Kanji observes that it wouldn't be a surprise if Oryu managed to sell everything, but the young man says he is barely making a profit, as it is a really high investment. Kanji says everything is fine as long as the young man is happy with his work, but Oryu looks downcast and says he is feeling lonely around there. He misses women because there are no pretty young ones around, and he is already 30, but no one wants to marry a country man. While Oryu is venting, Chris arrives next to Suni. Oryu even went to group dates and parties nearby, but there wasn't a single good woman. Sumi approaches the young man and thanks him for his help. Kanji introduces Chris to Oryu. The young man looks like he's going to have a fit when he sees her. Then, he asks the MC who that girl is. He hovers over the young man trying to gather information, and Kanji says she is his fiancée. Then, Oryu greets her. Next, he turns to his friend, indignant, and asks how Kanji, in middle age, managed to get such a beautiful girl. Oryu's parents arrive to help, and after the young man calms down, they manage to quickly harvest the carrot field. Later, Kanji drives back home and remembers his friend's desperation to meet women, but Kanji can only think of Hanami. Meanwhile, Chris is excited because the harvesting machine not only took care of the harvest for them, but also cut the stems and washed the dirt off the carrots. Kanji says this was the first time he saw a carrot harvester too, and it was as impressive as when he saw the potato harvester for the first time. Chris observes that the technology of that world never ceases to amaze her, and Kanji says it was all thanks to Oryu. The girl wonders how she has never seen Oryu before, since they live in the same village, and Kanji says they live on opposite sides of the place. Chris says that he is a robust man and could be called a bad influence. Moreover, he resembles the protagonist of the soap opera she is binge-watching. Kanji remains silent, and Chris notices that he is feeling jealous. Upon arriving home, the girl clings to her husband's arm. Someone calls Kanji, and he answers. Despite Oryu being old-fashioned and having a strong sense of duty, he is a good young man, handsome, and quite intelligent. However, he is very hungry for love and pressures Kanji to find a good woman for him.